Okay, good afternoon. Welcome. I'm Dan Garodnick, Chair of the City Planning Commission and Director of the Department of City Planning. Welcome to today's review session of the City Planning Commission. Today's date is May 28th. We are joined today by Commissioners Benjamin, Cerullo, Dweck, Kermani, Marin, Osorio, Gold, and Rampersad on Zoom. Coming. I hope everyone had a relaxing and enjoyable Memorial Day weekend. And before we move to today's agenda, I'd like to go over some recent events related to our important planning work. First off, I want to thank everyone who joined the Department of City Planning and Councilmember Julie Wan for our remote and in-person focus area meetings on the Long Island City Neighborhood Plan. These meetings were great opportunities for people who live, work, and spend time in Long Island City to get a first look at the draft planning framework for the Long Island City Neighborhood Plan, which will support new housing, jobs, enhanced public space, and more. Stay tuned for the latest at licplan.nyc. I'd also like to thank everyone who attended the tours and events that we and our partners across the city organized for NYC 520, our annual celebration of New York City's 520 miles of waterfront. These free and fun events, which took place between May 18 and 20 across all 5 boroughs, let New Yorkers explore our city's fantastic, diverse ecosystem and wonderful waterfront. I'm happy to report that the weather was mostly agreeable and we had plenty of rich discussions on our ongoing work to improve resiliency, ecological health, and public access along the city's waterfront. For today's agenda, we'll kick things off with the South Jamaica Gateway rezoning. This proposal by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development to construct 2 100% income-restricted affordable residential developments near York College and the Jamaica Center Parsons Archer subway station in Jamaica, Queens. If approved, these 2 sites would generate 144 homes in total. 1 building would be dedicated to affordable senior housing, with 30% of the units set aside for formerly homeless seniors. The second building would set aside 15% of its units for formerly homeless New Yorkers of all ages. Next, we've got a big one on the table, an application to facilitate the replacement of the Port Authority bus terminal. As anyone who has commuted through the terminal might guess, this hub located at 8th Avenue and 42nd Street is the busiest bus terminal in the world by volume of traffic. It serves 260,000 people on an average weekday and more than 65 million people a year. That's more people than live in Italy, by way of comparison. But this 74-year-old terminal, even with several renovations, is showing its age and reaching the limits of its capacity. By replacing it with a new bus terminal, the Port Authority can meet the expected increase in bus ridership in the coming years, improve bus storage and reduce on-street congestion and idling, and modernize services and amenities for passengers. This new transit hub would also include 2 commercial towers, new retail space, and electric charging capabilities. This project is vitally important to the future of New York City and will help ensure it has the bus capacity to serve its residents, those who live in the region and those who visit from throughout the country for decades to come. These proposed changes would not just help the bus terminal itself, they would bring increased connectivity and public realm improvements to the whole West Midtown neighborhood. With other major initiatives nearby, including the Western Rail Yards, our proposed Midtown South mixed-use plan, and the Gateway Tunnel's improved train capacity, this is truly a transformative moment for Midtown. Shifting to post-referral reviews, our next project is in Lower Manhattan, about a half-mile up the road from this very building. The owner of 105 Duane Street is requesting a renewal of their 2019 special permit to facilitate changes to their existing privately owned public space. Staying in Manhattan, we'll head up to 51 East 125th Street in Harlem for a private application looking to determine if a transit easement is necessary at the site. Last, but certainly not least, we'll hear about modifications proposed by the City Council Subcommittee on Zoning and Franchises and Land Use Committee to City of Yes for Economic Opportunity. This initiative, being advanced by the Department of City Planning, seeks to modernize outdated zoning to support small businesses and entrepreneurs, create thriving commercial corridors, and bolster New York City's economic recovery. I just want to take a moment to thank the council committees, especially Chairs Salamanca and Riley, and of course, Speaker Adams, for their support to advance this critically important proposal with modifications, which we will hear more about shortly. I'd also like to highlight some important commitments made by the administration last week. In recognition of the health challenges posed by certain logistics facilities, the city will be collaborating with the City Council on an indirect source rule to regulate warehouse emissions and advancing new regulation on last-mile warehouse facilities. Our partners across government will also continue to invest in modern, low-carbon alternative delivery modes and will incorporate these tools and more into our forthcoming industrial strategic plan. And having heard some concerns about nuisances, the administration will also be investing in enforcement through the Department of Buildings, the Office of Nightlife, and NYPD, and continue to crack down on illegal cannabis shops. I hope New Yorkers across the city who raised these concerns throughout the public review process will see that we have responded to substantive input that we received. I encourage the full council to vote in favor of this plan during their next meeting in June. So with that, we've got a hefty agenda ahead, but Sarah, I turn it to you and let's get the meeting started.
Good afternoon and welcome to the City Planning Commission Review Session for Tuesday, May 28, 2024. The time is 1:08 p.m. and a quorum is present. The first item on our agenda is a certification of a UDAP designation, project approval, disposition of city-owned property, zoning map, and zoning text amendments in Queens Community District 12. Our presenter is Shristi Bajrahar Shakya.
Hi, Shristi.
Thank you, Zara. Good afternoon, Chair Gorodnik and the commissioners. Next slide, please. So this is an application by New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, HPD, in conjunction with co-applicants Fulcrum Properties, LLC, the Briarwood Organizations, LLC, and Moses Soul Realty, LLC, for a zoning map amendment from an R4, R5B, and R5D with a C14 overlay to an R7A zoning district with no change to C14 overlay and a corresponding text amendment mapping mandatory inclusionary housing, or MIH. They are also proposing Urban Development Action Area designation and an Urban Development Action Area program, UDAP approval, which would provide tax breaks for the development team and would allow HPD to dispose of city-owned sites to the developer. These actions would facilitate the development of 2 new 9-story mixed-use buildings with a total of approximately 143 units that would be 100% income restricted, 78 of which would be affordable independent residences for seniors or heirs, and 65 income restricted units plus 2 units for superintendents. The project area has 2 development sites located at 106-01 Gaia Brewer Boulevard, which is Site A, and 162-04 Tuskegee Airman Way, which is Site B in South Jamaica, Queens Community District 12. Next slide, please. The project area is located within 2007 Jamaica Plan rezoning, which sought to rezone all or portions of 368 blocks in downtown Jamaica, supporting housing and economic opportunities, and preserve adjacent low-density neighborhoods outside of the downtown core. The surrounding area consists of some important community assets and is very well served by transit resources. Downtown Jamaica is approximately 0.4 miles north of the project area. The project area is located at a proximity to a transit-rich destination with numerous transit resources. Jamaica Transit Hub is located within approximately 0.7 miles northwest of the project area, servicing EJZ subway lines, air train connecting to JFK Airport, and also the LIRR line. Jamaica Center Station is located 3 blocks northwest of the project area across from a LIRR track that also services E, J, and Z subway lines. Saffron Boulevard and Parsons Boulevard Station, which services the F train, is located approximately 0.7 miles north of the project area along Hillside Avenue. York College is located just across Tuskegee Airman Way to the north of the project area. There is an MTA bus depot located 3 blocks east of the project area fronting Merrick Boulevard. South Jamaica Houses, which is a NYCHA development, is located 3 blocks southwest of the project area. And Rufus King Park is located within half a mile of the project area. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. The surrounding area has a wide range of land uses, including mixed commercial and residential, multifamily, walk-up and elevator buildings, 1- and 2-family residential buildings, institutions, community facilities, retail, commercial and office buildings, etc. Colored in blue on the map across Tuskegee Airman Way to the north is York College that houses health and physical education building within its ground. The southeast and east of the project area is zoned R5B and R4 district, which is predominantly developed with 2-story, 1- and 2-family residential buildings colored in light yellow on the map. Mixed commercial and residential buildings colored in pink on the map is mostly located along Gaia Brewer Boulevard and Tuskegee Airman Way within an R5D zoning district with a C14 commercial overlay. The project area depicted by a dotted line on the map was rezoned from an R4 district with a C12 overlay to its current designation of R5D with C12 commercial overlay in 2007's Jamaica Plan rezoning. Next slide, please. In the map here, the project area depicted by the dotted yellow line encompasses 8 different lots of Block 10129 and lots 1, 3, 69, part of 68, with slivers of lots 13 and 14 of Block 10161. And the project area consists of 2 development sites, Site A at the southeast corner of Tuskegee Airman Way and Gaia Brewer Boulevard, and Site B at the southeast corner of Tuskegee Airman Way and Union Hall Street. The development site A, shaded in green on the map, covers lots 1, 3, and 9 of Block 10161. Lot 9 is not a part of the rezoning area and will remain in our 5D district. Lot 1 is owned by Godin Fellowship. As mentioned earlier, Godin has owned and operated out of this location since 1996. The development site used to contain building that was used for Godin's office, ministry, and public outreach, but the building was recently demolished and is currently vacant. Lots 3 and 9 are owned by HPD. The City of New York had acquired lots 3 and 9 from Godin in 1984 and 1989 respectively. Lot 9 is currently vacant. The development site B, shaded in purple on the map, covers lots 1, 3, and 4 of Block 10129. These lots are owned by Thomas White Jr. Foundation. The site currently contains an outdated 1-story brick building that was constructed in 1931. The blocks of the development sites are bounded by 80 feet wide Tuskegee Airman Way to the north, 50 feet wide 164th Street to the east, 60 feet wide 107th Avenue to the south, and 50 feet wide Union Hall Street to the west. 70 feet wide Gaia Brewer Boulevard runs north to south between these 2 blocks. Next slide, please. To give a quick tour of the site, we will start with a view of the development site A, facing southwest from 164th Street. In the image on the screen, we can see Lot 9, which is the vacant land that is owned by HPD, depicted by the solid yellow rectangle on the screen. Next slide, please. And this image is showing the view of the development site A, facing south from Tuskegee Airman Way, depicted by a solid yellow rectangle on the screen. Next slide, please. This image is showing the view of the development site A facing northeast from Gaia Brewer Boulevard, depicted by a solid yellow rectangle on the screen. Next slide, please. This is the view of the west side of Gaia Brewer Boulevard, facing southwest from development site A. Gaia Brewer Boulevard is a commercial corridor with neighborhood retail uses and community facilities located along the corridor. Next slide, please. This image is showing the view of the development site B facing south from Tuskegee Airman Way, where we can see it is currently occupied by the one-story Thomas White Jr. Foundation building. Next slide, please. So in the development site A, the applicant is proposing to build a new 9-story plus cellar, 95 feet tall mixed residential and community facility building on lots 1 and 3 of the development site, while lot 9 would be improved with landscaping and programmed to serve as residential garden for residences of the development. The building would contain a total of approximately 45,000 square feet of zoning floor area, comprising approximately 42,200 square feet of residential floor area and 2,700 square feet of community facility floor area. They are proposing 78 total units in this development, which would be affordable independent residences of seniors, plus 1 superintendent's unit. Approximately 30% of the units would be set aside for formerly homeless seniors. The proposed development will include 11 necessary parking spaces at the ground level for both residential and community facility components of the development. Next slide, please. This map depicts the proposed development's ground floor plan. The entrance to the building's residential space and parking shaded in purple and parking space shaded in light yellow would be provided from Tuskegee Airman Way. A multiple access to the community facility shaded in orange would be provided from Gaia Brewer Boulevard, and the entrance to the open recreational space shaded in green would be provided from 164th Street. Next slide, please. In the development site B, the applicant is proposing to build a 9-story plus cellar, 95 feet tall mixed residential community facility building. The building will contain a total of approximately 47,500 square feet of zoning floor area, comprising approximately 43,000 square feet of residential floor area and 4,400 square feet of community facility floor area. They are proposing 65 income restricted dwelling units plus 1 superintendent's unit. Approximately 15% of the units would be set aside for formerly homeless households. The proposed development will include 16 necessary parking spaces at the ground level for both residential and community facility components of the development. Next slide, please. This map depicts the proposed development's ground floor plan. The entrance to the building's residential space, shaded in blue, and parking space shaded in light yellow, would be provided from the Union Hall Street. Multiple access to the community facility, shaded in orange, would be provided from Tuskegee Airman Way. Next slide, please. To facilitate the development, the applicant proposes a zoning map amendment from an R5B, R4, and R5D with a C14 commercial overlay to an R7A district with no change to the C14 commercial overlay on the project area. The R7A would allow for a maximum FAR 4.6 for residential uses, with the suitable provision of inclusionary housing and 4.0 for community facility uses. Next slide, please. The R7A is a contextual zoning district that allows for buildings to rise to a maximum height of 9 stories, totaling 95 feet. Parking spaces are required for 50% of the number of market rate dwelling units and 15% of income restricted units. R7A districts are located in medium density residential neighborhoods across the city, including Prospect Park South and Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn, Jackson Heights in Queens, and in Harlem, and along the avenues in the East-West and East Village in Manhattan. Next slide, please. In addition to the zoning map amendment, the applicant is proposing a zoning text amendment to map MIH on the site pursuant to option 1 or option 2. Shaded in dark gray on this map, the MIH boundary would be coterminous with the rezoning boundary. The applicant intends to utilize option 2, which requires 30% of the residential floor space to be permanently income restricted at an average of 80% of the area median income. Next slide, please. The applicant is also seeking an urban development action area designation and approval of an urban development action area project for the development site A. Next slide, please. This application requires a racial equity report because it would increase the residential floor area by at least 50,000 square feet. The annual median income for Community District 12 is approximately $69,000, which is lower than the annual median income for the Borough of Queens, New York City overall. The applicant proposes to provide 30% of the units in development site A and 15% of the units in development site B for formerly homeless individuals, totaling 34 units. The remainder of the income restricted units in both buildings will be provided across a range of 40 to 80% AMI at estimated average incomes ranging from $39,600 for a one-person household to $98,800 for a four-person household, with estimated monthly rents ranging from $850 for a studio to $1,910 for two-bedroom units. Next slide, please. As per the report, the local area's population is identified as approximately 54% Black, 18% Hispanic or Latinx, 15% Asian, and 2% white. Next slide, please. Between 2010 and 2020, the area saw an increase in Asian, Latinx, and white populations and a decrease in the Black population. Next slide, please. To summarize, the applicant is seeking a zoning map amendment, a zoning text amendment, an urban development action area designation, and a UDAP approval of development site A. These actions would facilitate the development of two new 9-story mixed-use buildings with a total of approximately 143 units that would be 100% income restricted with residential space and community facility space. And this concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much. I just want to clarify one thing, and it relates to the HPD programs that they're using here. So in Site A, it is their heirs units, all of them, and 30% of them are for formerly homeless seniors. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Site B, it says that is MIH option 2, which is usually if memory serves, that's a 30% requirement for MIH at 80% of AMI. But all of the units are affordable, or they're income restricted, and 15% of them are for formerly homeless residents.
Right.
Can you just lay out what the breakdown is of the 65 units in Site B and how they come to be?
Right. So they, for Site B, they're proposing a total of 65 dwelling units, of which 15% is set aside for formerly homeless residences. And the remainder of the units would be they are proposing at a range of affordable income bands that would average out at for 80%. So in this case, for development Site B, they're proposing 35% of the units for families earning 50% AMI, and approximately half of the total units for families and individuals earning under 70% AMI. And I can let the applicant team also know that they should be prepared to answer any. Okay,
I think that's really what I'm asking is, what's the program that they're using to get themselves to 15% for formerly homeless and then 85% for the rest of the units that are, as you broke them down, at 35% and 70% of AMI? That's really the question, but that's okay if we want to wait until they come.
Just so I understand your question, so I think they're utilizing Senior Affordable Rental Apartments SARA program. SARA, yeah. And then for the MIH units, they're utilizing Neighborhood Construction Program.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. Let me go to Commissioner Benjamin.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I had a question about why we're not encouraging commercial along Guy R. Brewer Boulevard. I understand that there's going to be community facility, but Guy R. Brewer is a major commercial thoroughfare for much of Jamaica, starting at Jamaica Avenue and then going all the way down basically to JFK. North of the Belt Parkway, it's certainly the major commercial street. So I'm wondering why we're not encouraging commercial in these two buildings that are on either side of it. And it's certainly, after York College, it's kind of the start of the end of the campus, the start of the community, why we wouldn't want to see commercial.
Thank you for that question. I wasn't a part of the conversation while they were talking about, the rezoning and everything, but I believe because, the applicants are Thomas White Junior Foundations and Fulcrum, they're churches. that they are proposing the development, so they wanted to have a community facility component.
Okay, could you ask them that question, because I find it somewhat, many times community facility space shutters itself from the street. So crossing over Tuskegee, you would have potentially really dead spaces in these two buildings, as opposed to livening up the beginning of Guy or Brewer. And particularly being that close to the campus, there might be some natural synergy of people going back and forth that I think we would want to support. So that if the community facility, I assume that one of them is potentially for Tom White.
Thomas White Junior Foundation.
Former council member. I assume one of them, but I don't know that they have to take up the entire first floor space that's available. I think that the developer we might encourage the developer to take a look at putting some kind of commercial there, because there's also not a lot of commercial for the residents in the building. They have quite a ways to traverse to find some commercial.
Okay. I'll let the applicant kind of know.
Okay. Thank you.
So that they could elaborate on that.
Commissioner Marin?
Well, while you're at it, thank you for the presentation. While you're at it, can we get a breakdown of unit sizes and income ranges that correlate to those unit sizes, please?
The unit sizes?
Unit sizes and their correlating income ranges.
I don't have that information right now, but I can ask the applicant team to.
No, that's what I figured. That's why I said, could you ask the applicant? I'm sorry if you didn't catch that. Yeah,
okay.
it's could you ask the applicant team?
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gold?
Sure. Thank you for the presentation. Just one point to follow up that kind of follows through on the chair's question. You know, it jumps out when we see 30% of units for formerly homeless in one of the buildings and then 15% in the other. And just curious, and you may not know it, it may be a point to follow up as to the difference there. Yeah, they're following something. There's something to get to those numbers. I'm just sort of curious how we're structuring the two different sites. You know, why we'd have different numbers.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, seeing nobody else, this item, oh, I'm sorry. I have one, who has their hand raised on Zoom? I'm sorry? Commissioner Rempershad, I'm sorry. We've got you on Zoom.
That's okay, thank you. I had the same question as Commissioner Benjamin. This area is, in my opinion, screaming for commercial. I was just wondering, how does this play a role in the downtown Jamaica study area that's currently going on? I don't know if the agency can answer it or.
Well, this development does lie within the area that we are kind of thinking about examining for a Jamaica neighborhood study, but which is still yet to kind of it is still in development, and we are still looking at it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Suri.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Just a very quick question on to build on what Commissioner Marin asked. If we can, in addition to getting the breakdown of the unit unit sizes, we can also understand how many of the studios are actually for former homeless families. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, we're now certified. Thank you very much, Risti.
The second item on our agenda is a certification of a special permit, city map amendment, and zoning text amendment in Manhattan Community District 4. Our presenter is Ben Huff.
All right, Ben, welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey is seeking multiple actions to facilitate the development of a new state-of-the-art bus terminal. As we will see in the presentation today, the existing Port Authority bus terminal is an aging, outdated structure with increasingly functional, physical, and operational constraints that require extensive recurrent maintenance and short-term fixes in order to meet its current needs. Additionally, the facility is not capable of accommodating the projected growth in travel demand in the region. The Port Authority is proposing to develop a new, modern bus terminal that will meet the needs of our growing city and region while adapting to the future with sustainable design features and improved accessibility. Perhaps most importantly, the proposed facility would replace the current infamous Port Authority bus terminal, which will transform West Midtown. For this new facility, there are 3 requested actions that the Port Authority is seeking. A zoning text amendment to incorporate a new section to the bus station special permit with new updated findings related to a modern bus facility located in Community District 4, Manhattan. It will also authorize the development of portions of a bus facility in demapped airspaces and to authorize the modification of regulations related to any use on the zoning lot. A special permit as modified by the proposed text amendment to allow the construction of a bus station with appropriate capacity, to allow a building to be built within demapped airspace, to allow the distribution of floor area without regard to zoning district boundaries, and to modify regulations to facilitate the development of commercial towers on the site. Finally, a city map amendment involving the elimination of specific volumes on portions of streets and avenues and the disposition of such demapped areas to the Port Authority. With approval of the requested actions, the development site would be considered a single zoning lot. So this is the agenda for the presentation. I have about 70 slides with a lot of information, but it's organized to give background on the bus terminal, context to its location, and then we will walk through the zoning actions that will facilitate the development. So the Lincoln Tunnel connecting Manhattan and New Jersey opened in 1937, and due to the tunnel's success, it quickly became apparent that a large bus terminal was needed on the west side of Manhattan. The Midtown Bus Terminal first opened in 1950 and operated out of a single concourse seen here on the left photo. The terminal had direct connections to the Lincoln Tunnel through a series of ramps. The terminal occupied the entirety of the block bounded by West 40th and West 41st Street and between 8th and 9th Avenue. The facility contained pedestrian access at a below-grade subway access floor, a main concourse, and a second floor. The bus levels were located at the level below the subway access floor and on the 3rd floor, with public parking on the 4th floor. As a result of the terminal being designed in 1950, the bus operations were configured to the size of then typical inner-city buses, which were 35 feet long and 96 inches wide. The photo on the right shows the 1963 expansion to the terminal, where the 4th floor was converted from public parking to bus operations, and a 3-story public parking garage was constructed over the facility. During the first 20 years, the terminal was always at capacity, with a growing number of commuters and travelers utilizing inter- and intra-city bus service. In 1971, the City Planning Commission granted a special permit to the Port Authority to expand the bus terminal to a new north wing and to allow the construction of an office building with approximately 1.2 million square feet of floor area above the terminal. The original bus terminal, now the south wing, was rezoned from an M15 district to a C67 district in conjunction with the special permit to generate the necessary floor area for the office tower. The special permit allowed the total permitted floor area for the expanded terminal and office tower to be distributed across the development site without regard to zoning lot lines. The city also demapped a portion of 41st Street 16 feet above grade to allow the north and south wings to physically connect, and the volume also allowed the 2 parcels to be combined into a single tax lot. The terminal expansion of the north wing was completed and operations began in 1981. The planned office tower, however, was never built. In total, the 3 bus operating levels in the north and south wings expanded capacity by approximately 50%, while also providing approximately 50 spaces for midday bus storage in the north wing. Today, the terminal is the nation's largest and busiest bus terminal. On a busy weekday in 2019, it served an estimated 260,000 passenger trips by accommodating 7,800 buses. Those buses comprise approximately 23% of Trans-Hudson trips entering or exiting the Manhattan Central Business District. The terminal operates routes for daily commuters throughout New Jersey, Eastern Pennsylvania, and the lower Hudson Valley. It also accommodates intercity bus services to and from locations such as upstate New York, New England, the Mid-Atlantic, and Canada. Buses today are typically 45 feet long and 102 inches wide, which can cause issues as they operate within the current terminal. The question for the port became, did they continue to stabilize and provide service at the current facility or plan for the future with a new terminal? Starting in 2013, the port began a series of studies to determine current needs, future needs, and operational solutions for the bus terminal. I will highlight a few. A 2015 Midtown Bus Master Plan studied several alternatives, including rehabilitation of the existing terminal, moving it to New Jersey, and relocating it within Midtown. The plan projected that bus ridership would grow from 260,000 daily users to 337,000 by 2040. The master plan also found that the extent of renovations required to the concrete slabs, passenger waiting areas, vertical circulation elements, restrooms, mechanical systems, and to reach compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act would result in significant reductions in the total number of available gates, as well as not meet the projected 2040 demand. Despite these challenges, a terminal in Midtown was still the most optimal location. The Trans-Hudson Commuting Capacity Study concluded that to meet growing regional commuting needs, a replacement bus terminal would require expanded peak period operations capacity regardless of improvements to other Trans-Hudson crossings. With feedback from the master plan study, the port created an international competition to design a new world-class bus terminal. Of the 15 entries, a short list of 5 concepts were presented to the public and a panel of experts. In 2019, the port began public meetings in New York and New Jersey in preparation of their environmental impact study and screened a list of alternatives that was drawn from the previous research. As we have seen over its history, the facility has been expanded a number of times to meet the needs of the growing number of users. However, since these expansions and modifications have all been applied to an existing structure, they do not address the challenges of the existing building. The ceiling heights are too low, the concrete slabs and mechanical systems require maintenance, there is no ability to install electric charging, and the passenger amenities and wayfinding is lacking. Furthermore, the neighborhood around the facility has grown, but the current system of ramp structures act as a barrier to the community and stifle public realm improvements. After all the technical analysis, research, public feedback, and input from the design competition, the port decided to advance a replacement facility that will consist of a new bus terminal that will meet the projected transit needs and provide an improved, modernized experience for riders. The facility would reduce bus circulation and idling on neighboring streets, contribute to the surrounding area through enhancements to the public realm, improve pedestrian circulation, add street-facing retail, and reinforce the civic importance of the site with world-class architectural design. The proposed bus terminal would consist of the main terminal, which will replace the existing terminal and include the main passenger area and all future bus gates. This new terminal will include significant design and operations improvements to facilitate a more efficient bus operation. To the west of the main terminal, the port will construct a bus storage and staging facility. Why is it called this? Storage is defined as midday bus parking for multiple hours between peak demand periods, while staging is a short-term dwelling of buses waiting to access their assigned gates, during which time the bus cannot be left unattended. These operations, which often happen outside the terminal, will now be consolidated in this facility. This facility would be located above an existing segment of Dyer Avenue. The westernmost component would be a helix-shaped ramp structure connecting the Lincoln Tunnel to the rest of the facility. This structure would be far more orderly and extensive than the twisting ramps that currently exist. The ramp structure would accommodate nearly all bus movements from the Lincoln Tunnel into the main terminal. Above the main terminal, 2 commercial office buildings totaling 5 million square feet that would be developed by a private developer after the completion of the main terminal. These commercial towers would provide funding for construction and operations of the new bus terminal. Separate from this application, the port would deck over 2 sections of the below-grade Dyer Avenue cut and use this space for construction, staging, and bus operations during development. It is expected the Port Authority will turn this property into a 3.5-acre open space upon completion of the new terminal. So the deck overs are at the very bottom of this slide. So before getting deeper into the proposal and how it works, I would like to give some current context to the existing facility. The land use around the project site is predominantly high-density commercial in the city's central business district between Times Square, Hudson Yards, and Midtown. You can see the outline of the development site in dashed red. The project site is in a portion of both the Special Midtown District and the Hudson Yards District. The development site spans approximately 13.86 acres across 7 tax lots. I'm going to flip through the 4 tax maps, starting with the easternmost site and moving west. This is Block 1032, Lot 29, which is the site of the current bus terminal. You can see the connection to the north and south wings from the 1970s demapping over 41st Street on the right side of the slide. Next, we have Block 1050, Lots 13 and 32, which is west of the last tax map. Then we have Block 727, Lot 1, 17, and 22, which connects 1 block to the south of the previous map. And then moving west, finally, the entirety of Block 711, also known as Galvin Plaza. We've discussed land use, but it's important to place the proposed bus terminal within the broader planning, transportation, and land use context of West Midtown. Here we have the development site outlined in red, the Dyer Avenue deckovers in dashed red, and the Port Authority properties in white with respect to Midtown Manhattan. This is an excellent location for a transportation facility with Times Square in the Theater District to the north, Javits Convention Center and Hudson Yards District to the west, and Penn Station and Moynihan Train Hall to the south with multiple subway lines connecting the area. The project site is near a number of major city initiatives and ongoing development. First, the new Gateway Tunnel, which has started construction and will increase Trans-Hudson rail capacity. This will lead to an upgraded Penn Station and, as proposed in the Penn GPP, a new train terminal next to Penn Station. The Penn GPP also proposed multiple development sites and new public spaces, including a shared street along 33rd Street and connections to Herald and Greeley Square. The city is proposing the Midtown South Mixed Use Plan, which will revamp much of the manufacturing districts in South Midtown to allow for residential development and commercial growth. A little further to the west, the Western Rail Yards will be decked over for a major commercial and multi-use development. A public realm vision for West Midtown was outlined in the 2022 New New York report. The plan highlights the civic importance of the bus terminal site and how an improved public realm will link key nodes together throughout West Midtown. The public realm is a key component in creating vibrant, active neighborhoods that can bolster post-pandemic recovery efforts to ensure regional and global competitiveness, improve quality of life by enhancing the pedestrian experience of residents, commuters, and visitors alike, and create a civic identity that is in keeping with the significance of the major regional gateway. Building on this report, the department believes the public realm is a key element to the development of the bus terminal and how the new text amendment findings were developed. So next, I want to do a quick review of the existing conditions of the bus facility, starting with the main terminal. These images show the terminal, passenger area, and some of the existing ramp structures. The terminal structure itself is a very imposing presence with its concrete bracing and its lack of transparency or architectural significance. Within the terminal, the facility has challenging features such as lack of natural light and passenger amenities that are a little outdated. Moving on to the future bus storage and staging site, this area is mainly dominated by ramps that connect the current facility to the Lincoln Tunnel. The bus movements through this area are not screened, and the existing streetscape has challenges due to narrow sidewalk widths and the lack of building street wall. On the site of the future ramp structure is an unimproved lot that mostly contains streets and the entrance to the Lincoln Tunnel. The block also has challenging sidewalks with narrow widths, and the entrance to the tunnel can get congested at peak commuting times. There is currently a dog walk adjacent to the 10th Avenue Bridge, known as Astro's Retreat, that is leased to a nonprofit at no cost from the Port Authority. Now I will take you through the proposed project and the zoning actions. So one more look of the existing conditions of the site. This is an aerial view looking north. Same view with the proposal. Again, the main components, we can see the new main terminal, the storage and staging building, the ramp structure, and the overbuild towers. So the proposed new bus terminal would have a new, larger building that would increase capacity for both peak hour buses and total passengers served from 260,000 daily riders today to a projected 337,000 in the future. 40 gates would be allocated for intercity buses that currently pick up and drop off in West Midtown, removing buses from local streets. The current facility has difficulty providing gates for these intercity buses because it is at capacity. The storage and staging building would have space for 350 buses, a grand main entrance on 8th Avenue, improving the civic presence of the site, large expansion of street retail area, including street-facing retail to activate current blank corridors, and the 2 commercial office towers with approximately 5 million square feet that would be privately financed and built through an RFP controlled by the Port Authority. The key to this proposal is the increased space for buses and passengers within the facility for a more efficient operation. So now I'm going to discuss how buses will move through the proposed facility. In the morning peak period, buses will travel through the Lincoln Tunnel and exit from the center or south tube. The buses will then turn north on Dyer Avenue and make a turn on one of 2 ramps between 39th and 40th Street located on the east and west side of Dyer Avenue to travel up to the ramp structure. This movement that I just described would be below the proposed storage and staging facility. In order to access upper floors, all buses must then travel west across 10th Avenue to the ramp helix structure. In the event of a bus breakdown, the ramps will be designed to have enough space for a bus to pass one another, which is something that various parts of the current facility lacks. The majority of buses will travel from the ramp structure to the storage and staging facility via the bridging over 10th Avenue. Once the bus enters the storage and staging facility, they will travel through and reach their main gates in the main terminal. Bus operations and gates will occupy the 5 floors above the pedestrian levels. The main terminal will accommodate more buses and operate more efficiently than the existing terminal, with flexible gate designs and improved circulation network with adequate space for modern electrified buses. When departing, buses will leave their gate and travel through the storage and staging facility and back to the ramp structure. The ramp structure will then take the buses to the north tube of the Lincoln Tunnel and out of Manhattan. A small number of buses will access the lower level via a tunnel from Dyer Avenue. These buses will be able to travel in, drop off passengers, and return to the Lincoln Tunnel via the below-grade right-of-way. There will be 7 gates on this lower level. Collectively, the facility and proposed operational changes to how buses enter the Lincoln Tunnel will improve Trans-Hudson bus travel while reducing the need for buses to interact on New York City streets. So now we'll review the zoning actions for the proposal. I'm going to discuss the text amendment, then the special permit. The mapping action will be toward the end of the presentation. The text amendment applies to Section 74145, special permit for buses of 10 or more berths. It would create a new section in order to facilitate the development of a modern bus facility and contain a new set of findings to ensure that the facility would be designed appropriately in regard to public realm and open space. This slide shows a condensed version of the new findings that the department, working with the port, created to update the text and reflect the department's considerations. The findings include many transportation-specific elements, like addressing traffic congestion, traffic volumes, and local street impacts. In particular, I'd like to focus on numbers 3, 4, and 5. These findings focus on design in the public realm, pedestrian circulation, open spaces, and the civic importance of the site. This is the nation's largest and busiest bus terminal, and the facility needs to be designed in a manner that reflects the importance of the site to the city and to the region. With thousands of people using the terminal, the facility must be designed with appropriate public and circulation spaces. This is the type of development that can transform the area from an eyesore into something that the community and New Yorkers can take pride in. The second set of findings is related to the proposed overbuild towers, which would be built within the footprint of the main terminal. Because this is the final phase of the project and pending selection of a private developer via an RFP process, the port is seeking flexibility in how they would be developed in relation to zoning regulations. This is reflected in the conceptual illustrations in the presentation, showing only the maximum building envelope. The buildings would require modifications to height and setback regulations, pedestrian and circulation space, and daylight compensation. The special permit pursuant to Section 74145, as amended, is to construct a bus facility of the appropriate size in commercial and manufacturing districts in CB4 Manhattan. The special permit will also facilitate the development of the commercial towers. As modified by the text amendment, the special permit would allow this development to distribute floor area across zoning districts on the zoning lot and allow bulk waivers to the commercial development. The department has also included new urban design controls into the special permit. So here's the site plan across the entire development. I will walk through each section from the terminals on the east to the ramps to the west. On the terminal site plan, we can see the unified passenger area seen here in yellow. To improve access between upper and lower levels and ensure ADA accessibility, the facility will get additional escalators and elevators, seen here in brown. The main terminal will contain a significant amount of accessory retail space, including street-facing retail, that will activate the streetscape and provide amenities for travelers and the public. Those retail areas are seen in the sort of light orange peach color. In blue are the lobbies for the future overbuild towers. These will have separate entrances. These lobbies will be designed so that in the interim, before the towers are constructed, they could be utilized as retail spaces. Loading docks are in the mint green color. Loading docks for the southern tower will be located along the north side of West 40th Street, west of 8th Avenue. Loading for the terminal itself will be on the south side of 41st Street, near 9th Avenue. Loading for the northern tower will be located at the end of reconfigured West 41st Street. On this slide, we can see the remaining section of 41st Street will be accessible from 9th Avenue. The port has coordinated with operational agencies like FDNY and NYPD to ensure that they will still have access from 9th Avenue if necessary. The darker gray areas are back-of-house operations for the terminal. Finally, the new terminal will not contain accessory parking. A taxi and for-hire vehicle pickup and drop-off zone will be provided adjacent to the main terminal on 8th Avenue, which is the current condition of the facility. I want to note that on this site plan, the port has coordinated with the Department of Transportation to widen sidewalks where possible and will continue to coordinate with them on any changes to the street moving forward. This applies for all portions of the new facility. The main terminal will retain the existing connections to the 42nd Street subway station below the main concourse. An existing on-street subway stair at the northwest corner of 8th Avenue and West 40th Street, seen on the bottom right of this slide, will be relocated adjacent to the future Southern Tower lobby. The port will coordinate with the MTA to achieve this. This level will contain approximately 13,700 gross square feet of retail space. The hatched rectangle in the middle of the space shows the future atrium, and this level will be accessed by escalators and elevators. As shown in the site plan, the port has designed the main terminal to allow for the future construction of 2 commercial towers. This illustration shows the overbuild towers, which will be built by a private developer. The purpose of the towers is to fund the development and operational costs of the new terminal, the mechanism of which was codified in a pilot agreement with the city negotiated earlier this year. The drawings submitted with this application depict only maximum building envelopes. The tower's maximum height would be 1,346 and 926 feet, respectively, and contain a maximum of approximately 5 million square feet. The storage and staging facility is designed with at-grade pedestrian accessible uses beneath the upper bus levels. The at-grade uses are expected to include approximately 65,700 gross square feet of street-facing retail, which will activate the street over the current condition. The retail, again, is seen here in the light orange peach color. A large triangular area at the southwest corner of the storage and staging facility will be maintained as an open space and provide pedestrian access to the street-facing retail. This may be maintained as clear pedestrian circulation space or activated with seating, plantings, lighting, canopies, and other permitted obstructions associated with the street retail. So now we have the ground level below the ramp structure. Due to engineering requirements, certain points of the ramp structure will be close to the ground, removing the ability for activation. In areas where there is adequate vertical clearance, the port plans for approximately 20,000 gross square feet of street-facing retail space. In the current design, the structure's 11th Avenue street wall will be built at the street line and contain accessory retail space. That's on the left side of the slide. So the department has worked closely with the Port Authority to develop urban design controls that will ensure the new bus facility delivers an improved high-quality public realm, one that supports the city's vision for West Midtown. The urban design controls are organized by 2 themes: overstreet building elements and streetscape. So first, we're going to look at the urban design controls for overstreet building elements, which are identified on the plan here in pink and include 9th Avenue, 10th Avenue, and 40th Street. These controls will require design features, which you can see here listed on the left, for bridging elements that cross city streets to ensure that they positively contribute to the urban environment, with thoughtful considerations to lighting, noise attenuation, materials, and/or artwork that enhance the pedestrian sidewalk experience. I will now walk through some before and after views of these locations to give you a better sense of scale and context to these elements. I should note that these images are taken from the environmental impact statement. Therefore, the proposal in the picture does not yet reflect design features that will ultimately be required. Here we can see the current condition of the ramps over 9th Avenue. And here we can see the proposed new bridging. The new structure will contain bus operations, which is why it is significantly larger. The bridging will be built much higher. The lower level will be raised from 21 feet to approximately 65 feet, which we do think is an improvement for pedestrians passing underneath. The upper height is also raised dramatically from 55 feet to 160 feet. The design controls will ensure that this bridging element will be designed in a manner that will enhance the experience of pedestrians below. So this is a view of the existing ramps that cross 40th Street at Dyer Avenue. And here we can see the bridging element as it wraps from 9th Avenue to the storage and staging facility. This element, again, is significantly raised. The top of the existing bridge is 49 feet. The new bridge will have a lower level of 63 feet and the upper height of 168 feet. Again, it's our intention the design controls will ensure that street level experience is improved for those passing underneath. Here we have the current view looking north on 10th Avenue. At the bottom of this picture, you can see the existing ramp. In the proposal, we can see the increase in the number of bridges crossing over 10th Avenue, 2 at each level, 1 for buses entering and the other for buses exiting the storage and staging building. Due to engineering constraints, we will still have a low clearance of 15 feet over this avenue, but that is an improvement from the existing bridge, which has a low clearance of 12 feet. Since these ramps only facilitate circulation, we will look to use the design controls to ensure more access to light and air, sort of as it's shown in the slide. So now let's look at the urban design controls for streetscape, which are identified on the plan, again here in pink. These controls will require design features seen on the left that will ensure key frontages across the development site. We want these key frontages to contribute to a high-quality public realm that prioritizes pedestrians, optimizes place and movement, and improves the quality of life of neighborhood and communities. These key frontages were strategically considered from a broader planning perspective to support priority corridors that will help link recent and future developments south and west of the development site, such as Hudson Boulevard and Park, with key points to the north and east of the development site, such as Times Square and Bryant Park. The goal to knit together neighborhood commercial corridors along the avenues. This slide shows the existing terminal on the left and the new entrance on the right. The new entrance and atrium, visible through glazing at the lower pedestrian levels and marked by an architectural gesture at the building's upper bus levels, will be visible down West 41st Street from Bryant Park and the New York Public Library, creating a strong visual presence that reflects the site's civic importance. Here we can see the current condition of 41st Street that bisects the two wings of the existing facility. Here, we are looking in the same direction from the subway level in the proposed facility. This new terminal includes ADA-compliant accessibility, modernized wayfinding, improved ticketing, gate, and queuing areas. Additionally, the atrium will allow passengers at the bus levels above access to natural light, a dramatic improvement from the existing conditions. The lobby will also improve connections to the subway lines for bus passengers, as well as the general public. Here we have the current terminal entrance on 8th Avenue. And here we have a rendering of the proposed main terminal. Our design controls here focus on improving and widening the sidewalk as much as possible to facilitate the expected increase in bus terminal users. We're also looking to increase the height of the bus levels, allowing more light and air at the street, and to increase transparency in the new terminal walls as they meet 8th Avenue. So this is a current view of the terminal looking west along West 40th Street. The current facility has nearly 600 linear feet of blank wall, which creates a very low quality pedestrian experience here. This is the rendering of the proposed terminal in the same view. Here we can see a much improved pedestrian experience with street-facing retail, including wider sidewalks and more active ground floor conditions with more transparency and building entrances. So this is also a view of West 40th Street, this time looking east from 9th Avenue. At the left of this image, you can see the existing bus bridges that cross 9th Avenue. Below these bridges, there is a public entrance to the bus terminal. Around the corner, a short walk down 40th Street. There is a bus entrance on the left that disrupts the sidewalk. You can sort of see it. It's small, but it's next to the cab that's traveling on West 40th Street. And here is the rendering of the proposed terminal from the same view. On this corner, the port has proposed to maintain the street wall of the existing buildings and will have retail at the corner. Since all bus circulation is handled by the ramp infrastructure, the bus entrance here is eliminated and an active pedestrian-oriented ground floor takes its place. You can see an entrance to the main terminal along 9th Avenue, that revolving door on the left. There will be a similar entrance along 40th, which roughly replaces the bus entrance we saw in the last slide. This is a slightly elevated view looking north over Dyer Avenue from 39th Street. You can see the existing bus ramp network in the distance. In the foreground to the left are the south and center tubes of the Lincoln Tunnel. And here we have the improved site with the storage and staging facility. This building will have the same number of floors as the main terminal. The ground floor will be improved with retail frontage along West 39th Street. The green open space in the foreground is a conceptual design of the repurposed Dyer Avenue deckovers. To build the new terminal while maintaining bus service, the Port Authority will phase construction of the replacement facility. Phase 1 will be first building the Dyer Avenue deckovers. That will allow interim staging and construction equipment as well as buses. During Phase 1, they will also construct the ramp structure and the storage and staging facility. That is projected to take roughly 4 years. For Phase 2, operations of the terminal will move from the existing bus terminal to the storage and staging facility. No longer needed for the bus gates, the main terminal will then be demolished and rebuilt. That phase is also expected to take 4 years. In Phase 3, operation will move back to the main terminal and the entire facility will function as designed. At that point, the Port Authority will select a developer for building the overbuild towers. With all bus storage and staging within the new facility, the port will then be able to convert the Dyer Avenue deckovers to a new 3.5-acre open space. So now I'll discuss the proposed mapping amendment that is linked with this land use application. So as we saw from the renderings, the new facility has many components that encroach over and into the right-of-way. The department, working with the port, has tried to minimize these various encroachments where possible, but also supporting demappings that will enhance the new proposal. So I think as we all saw from the new terminal, to unify that new terminal, the proposed amendment would complete the demapping of the eastern half of West 41st Street that was partially done in the 1970s. This demapping will remove westbound through traffic on this section of West 41st Street, and that was studied in the draft EIS. This would improve circulation both inside and outside the terminal. For other demappings, most changes to the city map can be grouped into 3 types. So we have above grade demappings, which are volumes in the air, seen in yellow, at grade, occurring at the lot line or street level, seen in green, and below grade, which is below curb level, seen in red. There are 3 above grade demappings on this slide I will discuss to facilitate the bridging elements and the ramps. So the bridging element over 9th Avenue will be approximately 100 feet measured across 9th Avenue by 147 feet measured north-south, and have a lower elevation at 40 feet above curb level. The bridging element located over West 40th Street between 9th and Dyer is approximately 60 feet across, measured north-south, and approximately 138 feet wide, measured east-west, and has an elevation of 40 feet above grade. The connecting ramps over 10th Avenue are approximately 100 feet measured across 10th, east-west, and 197.5 feet long, measured north-south. As discussed in the rendering, the lower limiting plane will match the required elevation of the lowest ramp, which is 15 feet across. All of these above-grade demappings will have an upper limiting plane of 50 feet above the height of the planned structure. For the main terminal, a portion of the structure will overhang 18.5 feet over a portion of West 41st Street by approximately 51 feet above curb level. This overhang is needed to provide adequate space for gates and bus movements within the main terminal. The lower height of the overhang varies, mostly because of changes in the grade to this part of Manhattan. Also along West 41st Street, the property would extend at grade approximately 3.5 feet, the same for below grade. Shown on the left, along West 40th Street, the property would extend 5 feet out above grade, 3.5 feet at grade, and 1.5 feet below grade. Not shown here, but along West 42nd Street, the property line would be extended by approximately 2 feet at the bus levels, so another above-grade demapping. The storage and staging facility will also have a sidewalk overhang element that extends beyond the property line, varying between 18 to 24 feet along the southern side of West 40th Street. This is approximately 50 feet above curb level. On the north side of West 39th Street, the storage and staging building will extend beyond the property line by 2 feet at and above grade and below curb level by 4 feet. The ramp structure requires the other certain volumes to be mapped. This includes along West 39th Street along West 39th Street at, above, and below curb level, extending the property line by approximately 2 feet, shown on the left. Along 40th Street, the property line will extend 15 feet at and below curb level. And the ramp structure also along West 40th Street will need to extend about 24 feet out, but because we're also extending the at grade, it creates a 9-foot overhang on 40th Street. That's seen on the right of this slide. Not shown on this graphic, but along 11th Avenue between West 39th and West 40th Streets, the property line will extend by approximately 6 feet above the ramp structure level and by approximately 2 feet between the ramp and curb level and approximately 6 feet below curb level. All of these demappings are explained in greater detail in the mapping amendment application, but we're happy to give you any information on those that you need. The Federal Transit Administration and the Port Authority are preparing an environmental impact statement to assess the potential benefits and effects of building the proposed project. A draft EIS was published on February 2nd, 2024. Public hearings were held in late February and early May. The draft identified significant impacts with respect to historic and cultural resources, shadows, transportation, and construction. Those materials are available on the Port Authority website, and the department is continuing to work with the port as they prepare their final environmental impact statement, which is expected to be completed prior to completion of ULURP. So to wrap up, the Port Authority is seeking the 3 zoning actions to facilitate a historic redevelopment of the Midtown Bus Terminal. The department has worked very hard with the Port Authority to craft a proposal that meets their needs while balancing the fact that this facility will be constructed in a growing neighborhood. This represents a once-in-a-generation, really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reinvent one of the major front doors of New York City. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Ben. And first of all, let me congratulate you and thank you for an extraordinary amount of effort that went into getting us to this moment. I know that you and other members of the Department of City Planning worked very hard to make sure that we are here today. And we really appreciate it. So thank you very much for all of that. I just wanted to pose a few questions, and I know that other commissioners have questions too. I was out there this morning standing on 9th Avenue looking at the ramps and looking at buses crawling their way into the terminal. They were stopped as they waited for their opportunity. I think I know what you're going to say to this, but I just want to understand it clearly. Which piece of this puzzle, which land use change, which new facility will most aid in getting those buses faster to their destination once they have come out of the tunnel and need to get to a gate?
Thank you for the question. I think it's really two. So, it's all of the zoning actions really will help the new bus terminal ease that condition that you saw. So we need a bigger facility, and the special permit and the text amendment is needed for that. And we need the mapping amendment. So having this new, larger bus terminal, having a more orderly ramp structure, that will reduce the congestion that we see at the bus terminal today. I think I mentioned it very briefly, but as we're looking through the proposed renderings, the ramps are designed wider so that in the event of a bus breaking down, they would be able to pass it. And so there are certain instances of breakdowns that could cause congestion. I would say, we discussed that the current facility was designed for smaller buses. With the 5 operating levels, we have larger gates, more flexible gates that will allow buses to come in and out quicker and facilitate faster through the facility. So I think the way the port has designed this new terminal, they really want to, try to eliminate what you saw this morning.
The construction phasing that you noted has a period of time in which the new main terminal will be constructed while the storage and staging facility for a period will be used as a temporary main terminal. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is there any anticipation of having to reduce the capacity of the terminal during that period of time when the storage and staging area is being used as the main terminal?
I don't have that exact information off the top of my head, but I think that's a question that can ask the port, and they can have more information on.
Okay. Let's talk about the 9th Avenue entrance and exit for a minute. The rendering that you showed us from the port showed a very modest entrance exit on 9th Avenue and another parallel modest entrance on 40th Street. Did the applicant here consider doing something grander at the corner, something that would be more consistent with a civic space that people would recognize at that corner? What was the thought process there?
I think the port's feelings on that particular avenue and the entrance has evolved through the development of the project. I know that we asked a lot of questions about this, and sort of studies that they've shown, studies that they did showed that way less travelers use the western entrance, the 9th Avenue entrance, than the main entrance on 8th Avenue. But it's certainly something, we think is important for the future, as much of the neighborhood on the west side is growing as well. So, a lot of this design, it's not fully set in stone. And so I think that is a question that we can continue to ask the Port Authority.
Good. I think we should. I mean, even if the capacity were not as great on 9th Avenue or didn't need to be as great on 9th Avenue, it does feel like it still is, I forgot the words that you used precisely about that front door, that first moment.
That grand, yeah.
Yeah, it needs to feel like the space that it is intended to be, which is a grand civic space at all corners of the building. So I think we should talk about that one further, but okay, let me ask you one last one, and then I'll go to my colleagues. The Dyer Avenue open spaces. I recognize that is at the end of this process, but it is anticipated that a couple of blocks south of the future terminal or perhaps staging area will be green space for the public. Has the port or the city given any detailed thought into how to make those spaces something that is compelling, that is active, that is a place that people will want to be? Has any thought or planning gone into that question yet?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. That's a really good question. Certainly was on our mind a lot through the development of this proposal. There's some challenging things. One, it is quite far out, the process to convert those. It's a decade. So I think, when we've asked questions to the port, they've said it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense to design it now, since it won't be built for a decade. There should be a process that is captured in the future that has, if they go to the public, it'll be people who will be using the facility more quicker. The port is going to need to maintain access and sort of ownership of those two deck overs, because they are still managing and need Dyer Avenue to function below it. So it's going to have an interesting sort of ownership structure in the future, with sort of a public condition above and a private condition below. We've asked questions about that. I think the port, in good faith, they very much want those spaces to be high quality, accessible to the neighborhood, and high functioning. And for that, it will have to, have really good maintenance and operations of those facilities. It would be one of the larger open spaces in that neighborhood. I mean, there really isn't much there like that. These are all really good questions, and I think we will continue to talk with the port on how we can think of that process.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Commissioner Benjamin, followed by Vice Chair Knuckles.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. First, I'd like to say that I was a member of the 2016 jury for the international competition. I am not recusing since 2016. I have not had anything to do with any of these proposals, so I will not be recused. But as you can imagine, having been intimately involved in replacing this facility, I do have a number of questions. And the first was that I think we need I at least need a plan that shows the gates on each floor, the size of the dimension plan of the actual bus terminal, not of the kind of general main floor retail, but of the actual bus terminal. Also, I want the dimension plan to show the turns, because one of the problems historically with replacing this is the tightness of the turns, and whether how buses can negotiate those turns easily. And that was one of the goals of the original competition, was to try and find a way to encourage that so as to limit the dwell time at each gate. One of the constricting factors was how long it takes each bus to stay in the gate. And at that time, it was about 25 minutes, whereas one of the members who was from China and ran the big bus terminal said that they have an average of 6.5 minutes. So how the passenger side is going to be set up is something I'd like to see, how they're going to deal with, because if they still have 30 minutes to load a bus, they're not going to be able to get the throughput that they're looking at. So they must be anticipating some changes in the loading and in how the gates are set up. Right now, the majority are sawtooth gates. And so many times they have to back up somewhat so that they can get out, which provides limitations because many times other buses can't get by them when they're doing these operations. So I think it's important that we look at all of those issues by having this dimension site plan that shows all of this interaction as a result of how the new terminal is going to work.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate how much you know about bus terminals. This is really good for this project. I didn't get to speak too much to it, but if you allow me, I'll have to scroll back a while. But on the bus circulation slide, we do show the bus gates briefly.
Not in dimension.
Right.
And not how is it a sawtooth gate? Is it a pull-in gate? Because the western 9th Avenue, Dyer Avenue side is fairly constricted, even in that drawing, for how the movements can happen.
Yeah.
So
they have provided a lot of information in the project description and in the application itself, so we can get that, what information they have provided to you.
Yeah,
and I think for more detailed on the terminal itself, we'll get that as well.
One of the issues was always the intercity buses that are outside, like Bolt.
Yep.
Part of the issue is they didn't want to be inside. Even Peter Pan is inside, some of Greyhound is inside, but the newer buses like being outside. So I'm not sure we're going to get rid of that problem by building a new terminal. And the Port Authority wasn't always certain they wanted them in.
So that's a very good question, Commissioner. So one of the reasons why those bus terminals the buses are allowed to operate on West Midtown streets is they don't have space in the bus terminal. Otherwise, for anyone doing pickups and drop-offs in that area, they have to go into the bus terminal. But because it's at capacity, they were allowed to operate they get a license or a permit, rather, from the Department of Transportation. I think this new facility is going to be very attractive to the buses because it improves operations so that these buses can move into the facility and out quicker. They'll have better amenities for the passengers themselves, as well as amenities for the bus drivers. With this new facility with more gates and more spaces, they won't necessarily have as easy of an access to the permit that they currently use. And I can't remember the exact date, but while we were developing this proposal, the Port Authority did do sort of a questionnaire with operators and got some feedback. And they said that, if given the opportunity in a new facility, they would take advantage of it. But we will find out more information on that, and we can.
And 8 years ago, it seemed like the proposal of whether they would use it was in part dependent on what the price would be per gate. Of course, the more the price is and whether they can actually find a way to pay for the facility that's not passed on to the bus companies determines in part whether those outdoor bus companies will continue. So I'd be interested in how that's going to happen and how many gates they believe they're going to assign to the intracity buses, which have different characteristics also than many of the buses going intercity.
So from the information we've been provided, we have the 40 gates that they've shared with us, but I think that's good to continue to ask them as the proposal continues through the process. Yeah.
Now, who's building the infrastructure for the two office buildings? Clearly, if we're building a new terminal, we're not going to let them go through the terminal to do piling. So are they going to have their RFP and chosen developer before they start construction of the new facility, or are they going to do a generic infrastructure that would support those two built? How is that going to work, and who's paying for it?
That is a really good question, Commissioner. I don't have that at this time, but I'll note that.
I have two more questions, and then I'll wait for a second round. Is there space in this new facility, which is one of the issues, for bus maintenance, fuel, and other things that the buses themselves might require?
I don't have that information right now. I know that there is, you know, the storage and staging facility will have a lot of space for buses in the midday. As we have asked a lot of questions about electric charging, and they are designing this building with the intention of having electric charging capabilities in it.
Yeah, and that would go back to my first question about the dwell time. If they're going to have electric buses, and if the buses, I mean, right now, the buses don't lay over in the terminal by and large. They have, if you want to take a look, it's the map that you had, but these are all the sites that the Port Authority currently uses for bus layovers after the peak time, which I assume during the construction periods, they're going to continue to use those sites to store buses until the peak in the opposite direction. But if they're going, either they're going to have to do work on those sites to install, if they're going to have electric buses, to install chargers and other things on those sites, or there's going to be increased dwell times, which will act against having the kind of throughput that we're looking for. So if you could just ask them the fate of all of the sites between, I guess it's 33rd Street and 39th Street, which also comes to about close to 3 million square feet of development rights. So that's my last question. What is the Port Authority, once all is said and done, what is the Port Authority doing with our 3 million square feet of development?
Thank you, Commissioner. That is a good question. We will pass it on.
Thank you. I really appreciate the attentiveness that you've clearly developed and all of your attention to the various issues. I think the bus terminal, which has more daily passengers than Grand Central Station by a lot, has been neglected for a long time, and that it is time for us to put the city's minds, resources, creativity behind a solution that will work, as this one has more or less, for another 70 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner, Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. It was an excellent presentation. My first question is terminology. Is this not a large-scale development plan? Or
it is not. Yeah.
Distinguish the two then. This from a large-scale development plan.
Yeah. I mean, this is not a state process. They are coming to the City Planning Commission to approve, you know, for these zoning actions that would facilitate this. Mm-hmm. So they opted for ULURP over, you know, rather than a large process. But yeah, Eric.
Sure. I'm glad to step in. Thanks for the question. This is different from a large-scale development special permit. They're seeking a separate special permit. It accomplishes some of the things that a large-scale special permit, you know, provides in terms of bulk flexibility, for example. Yeah. But this is a special permit specific to permitting a bus station and has its own separate set of findings that Ben walked through related to this specific use. So it is a special permit that facilitates the bus station use on this site, and it's distinct from and completely different from a large-scale special permit.
Okay, thank you. My second question, I think, is akin to the earlier question from Commissioner Benjamin, and that is, in the tower development, whoever is selected, is their property interest then a leasehold from the Port Authority, or would they actually be, you know, fee owners of? Well, I guess they'd own the building, but who would own? What's the nature of the property interest that the developers of the towers have? You follow me?
Not quite, Commissioner. If you could just,
I'm saying,
yeah.
whoever develops the towers, is that a leasehold that they have, where the lessor is the Port Authority?
I think that's something still to be worked out down the road when the developers are identified, but it's something we'll ask the port about and ask them if they know we can get that information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Commissioner Osorio?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation, and I concur with my colleagues in terms of the importance of this project and the thoroughness of the materials and the presentation. Thank you very much. I want to start with a quick comment, building on what the Chair mentioned regarding the open space. I would really like to underline the importance of having a better understanding of how the proposed open spaces will integrate with the station in general, and not just in terms of access, but also in terms of urban design. That is feeling a little bit sort of like disconnected. In addition, I have a couple of questions. So the DEIS, both in the energy and greenhouse gases chapters, state that a recent Port Authority policies has expressed an intent to achieve a net zero profile. Yet it's not clear how that will be achieved, and I'm wondering if you have any information that you can share with us now, or whether this is still being fleshed out. I'm just interested in learning how this will be addressed by the time the final EIS is complete. Along the lines of that question, you know, I was really interested in how the electrification of the mechanicals will significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but I didn't read, and there's significant energy efficiency measurements explained throughout, but I didn't see whether there were any renewable resources proposed on site, and I'm wondering if there's anything you can share with us at this point, or if not, for later.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't think we have all of the, much detail on this. I know that the port has said that their goal is for the replacement facility to be LEED silver. So that's sort of their overall goal. They want to deliver an innovative, energy efficient, all electric or electric ready new terminal and staging and storage facility and the supporting infrastructure. As far as renewables on site, they haven't shared any of that information with us. We did ask questions about stormwater management and how a facility of this size with a really large roof would manage stormwater, and they are looking at stormwater detention and rainwater harvesting. So they have shared a little bit of details on that.
Thank you. That's useful. And I have some questions about stormwater inundation in a minute, but I just want to go back to what you said, because the last paragraph in the energy chapter states what you said. In fact, it's very clear about LEED V4 silver certification being the goal, but literally the next sentence states the idea that to achieving, so like it says like there's a recent policy with the intent of achieving net zero, but it doesn't provide any more information. That's why I'm bringing that up in terms of whether is this something that is really sort of like connected with actual improvements or not, or if you can clarify what that means, because otherwise it's what you said. Then why do we have this here? It's also in the greenhouse gases and climate change chapter of the DEIS. So anyway, something that I hope gets clarified. And just to clarify, you said that there are no renewables planned for site.
Thank you, Commissioner. I can't say I can answer that question right now, but that is something we can get more info from the port.
Thank you. Yep. Another quick question along the lines on or related with the energy system. So it's on building on what Commissioner Benjamin mentioned about spaces to service the buses. There is a significant amount of information about the servicing and the charging of electric buses, kind of like anticipating a little bit how many of them will be, but there is some specific mention about the type of battery storage that will be installed, but nothing on where that will be, and I'm wondering if you can clarify a little bit, you know, where that would be, how much, how big in terms of the storage it will that be, and also whether this will service just the station or ostensibly the commercial buildings. This would require, so just to clarify, given the changes associated with CWS for carbon neutrality, will this still require a special permit in the commercial district, or how will that work in relation to this, to the land use proposals that we're discussing right now?
Thank you, Commissioner, for the question. I want to know more, which special permit are you referring to, or the additional special permit?
Energy storage, big scale energy storage in commercial districts.
I would say the Port Authority hasn't given us information on sort of battery storage or energy storage at the moment that we could answer that if they'll require to come back for another one at this time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So if you can provide more information down the road, I would appreciate that. And then going back to your point, so thank you for mentioning the stormwater flooding improvements. I had noted that the DEP's stormwater inundation maps actually show that this is an area that is currently being vulnerable to that type of flooding. The DIS is very clear that in terms of coastal flooding, we're outside the requirements, but I'm wondering if you can. I was interested in hearing why, for example, the urban design controls that you mentioned that potentially could include some additional improvements to both address the pedestrian experience on one hand, but also just even in terms of capturing some stormwater or somehow relieving like the potential excess stormwater on this part of Midtown.
Right. Thank you for the question, Commissioner. I appreciate this because I formerly worked at DEP, so these concepts are near and dear to my heart. The Port Authority has said they are looking at the facility to be designed with a green roof, one that would be able to sort of hold stormwater temporarily and reduce the speed and runoff volumes. That's kind of their intention right now, but we don't have a lot of information on it.
You said the storage facility?
No.
The actual
for storing stormwater.
But where will that
on the roof? Yeah.
Oh, but which one? Which part of it?
I think, the majority of them.
Okay.
Yeah. The main terminal will have the office towers on it, so that reduces sort of the footprint you see in this slide, but the storage and staging facility roof would be available for either a green or blue roof, something that, actively can manage some of the stormwater the site receives.
Okay, thank you. And just very quickly, if I have time for another, thank you. So I was also very pleased to see that there was a chapter on environmental justice as part of the DIS, and as it states, there will be adverse impacts. Most of them are associated with construction and so forth. But even though I saw a list of mitigation strategies, I didn't see any information on whether the environmental justice communities that will be impacted have been consulted on this. Is there any information that you can share with us in that regard? I mean, what has been sort of the conversation? Because ideally, you have to have a conversation with the communities that have been directly impacted or will be directly impacted.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Commissioner. I don't have that information off the top of my head or with materials with me, but I will ask more about that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kamani?
Thank you. First, huge thanks for the presentation. It was really, really excellent and clear and really well presented, and clearly is so much work, so I deeply appreciate it. I have a couple questions. One on the bridges that are and also, Commissioner Benjamin, totally support your last statement about the infrastructure and how important it is. I could not agree more with that, and who uses the Port Authority, and it's so important. The bridges are fascinating to me because they're so giant and necessary, and because I don't know much about this, would love to know from whoever, is there light that's going to be going through them? Are they really going to be that gray and like a wraparound? Like the illustration or the diagram shows? Yeah, like a blanket. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Commissioner. I just want to point out, the purpose of these ramps and why there are so many of them is we have more bus floors, and the way that the buses get to each level is through the ramp structure. So there is no way in the storage and staging facility in the main terminal that the buses can go up or down a level, so all would have to go out to the ramp structure and back.
Right.
So there is a lot of ramp structures. The bridging elements, this actually, like the section over 9th Avenue, they actually have operating gates here. They are utilizing this extra space and will have, gates in this part of the facility. On this one, this is really connecting the storage staging facility with the main terminal. So for this one, the port is still thinking about whether to clad this or leave it open. And I think our preference in the department has been that they be open to allow for more sort of light and air to come through this rather than another sort of blank condition. I mean, all of these are trade-offs that we have to take with the new facility because we have a much bigger facility, something that removes buses from city streets. We've also discussed with them ways we can make this attractive with artwork underneath and lighting. We've seen really cool lighting that could travel with the buses as they go over the ramp. And so we are working to, encapsulate that in the urban design controls with the application to really consider these elements and make sure that they enhance the experience. Yep.
I'll just add one thing, which is as Ben described, one of the actions that's being sought here is a text amendment that modifies the findings related to the bus special permit. And those findings are being really significantly enhanced to address specifically the conditions of this station of the size in this particular location. One of the findings speaks to specifically the bus ramps and overpasses, and that the commission find that those elements, together with other aspects of the station design, do reflect the civic importance of the site and its location in, kind of like embedded in these neighborhoods. So, I think that is something that is, it's I think an excellent question, and one that we will continue to be looking at. We'll be coming back to you again. The port will be coming back to address questions about what these ramps will look like, how they'll be clad, will they be enclosed or open. I think that's all very much up for discussion as this moves through the process. As Ben said, these images that you're seeing on the slides here are taken from the environmental documents. They don't reflect really in any way a design intent at this stage.
Yeah.
So,
great, thank you so much. My next question and last question is really about the kind of one of the concerns of the Port Authority in general, the terminal, and that it divides the neighborhood. And so talking about that and about the public realm vision and the ground level streetscape, and I know from talking with other people that, and my own experience working at the Times Square bid and working in the area, that 9th Avenue, many locals really consider 9th Avenue like Main Street, right? And I don't mean this to be about the bowling alley. I happen to love the bowling alley at Port Authority, but in that, with that in mind, maybe it's not a question, more of a consideration of how bringing that kind of Main Street as an effort to address the way that the Port Authority divides a neighborhood, and that structure is still going to be there, as beautiful as it will be. There is that still that feeling of dividing a neighborhood. I'm just eager to see more about the ground level streetscape and the possibilities of connectivity.
Thank you for the consideration, Commissioner. We agree. And I know So we have this proposal of the rendering,
Yeah.
you know, they really are looking at capturing more transparent, retail at the street level. And so, and with the bridging elements raised, I think it'll be this proposed development could improve the condition. And again, we are looking to capture that in the text amendment, findings, as well as the urban design controls. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gold?
Thank you, and I'd echo what everyone else has said. It was a terrific presentation, very clear. A couple of things. One is, you mentioned in there that we're doing what we can for the street level experience to be improved underneath, but it'll be that new big bridge. Can you talk about that? What can they do to, aside from raising it, which presumably gives some more light and air, what does one do to improve that experience of walking under that thing?
Well, thank you for the question, Commissioner. We, in working on the proposal with the Port Authority and with other city agencies, we're looking at sidewalk widths and a lot of conditions that could be changed along the sidewalk with tree plantings. The transparency of the building is going to be much better. I mean, we talked about sort of the blank wall that exists on 40th Street, but as we can see in this proposal, like this proposed condition with retail there, the buses sort of happening. Like right now, there's actually a bus entrance on this section of 40th Street that would be eliminated. So wider sidewalks, improved, transparency in the building itself, and retail will just help activate it and make it a more pleasant experience.
So you're speaking more specifically, less specifically, let's say, to the bridges, and more specifically to the area in general.
Correct. Yes. I think there are ways that we could consider the overhang elements, again, with lighting or artwork and other conditions of their design. Just having a new bus terminal, it's less like a piece of infrastructure and more, has these architectural gestures on the upper levels that will just feel better than sort of what we have at the moment.
Got it. And then speak for a minute, if you can. I think one of the things we spoke about is are there 3 levels of parking right now that are being taken out? Was it? It seems, I know there's a parking facility there. I think you mentioned, or it certainly doesn't look like that's being replaced. So just if you can speak about what's going and who uses that facility aside from, I know there's the ability, I think they have it rented out, but it seems also that some of the employees or, folks who might be the cops use it, or
right.
Just if you can talk about that a little bit and how many spots they're losing.
Sure. Thank you for the question on that, Commissioner. I don't know off the top of my head exactly how many levels, but I know it was 1,094 parking spaces exist in the current structure, and the new facility will not have any. So that's another improvement, is the infrastructure that was needed to get those cars to the upper level, and where they come from New York City streets, those will no longer be present. But thinking of this 10 years out, we'll have a much different Manhattan. Possible congestion pricing is happening there. So we did think a lot about taxi and for-hire vehicles and where those facilities could be, so that passengers arriving that might be switching to car as opposed to subway, how they could sort of seamlessly transition to their next mode. But the parking itself, 1,094 spaces and none in the future condition.
And are those all right now rented out in basically privately operated, or some of those are used by employees of the facility, or do we know?
I can take that question back and find out.
The parking facility, and I'm shocked to hear it's 1,100 spots. So there must be some that are not. What's that? 3 floors. Yeah. 3-4. Got it. I've only been on one story, which I think is open to the public. So I'm guessing the others are used for others, but it'd be useful or interesting to know that about.
Sure. I think, the users of the current facility, we can ask more questions about that.
And then just, if I can sneak in one other, it looked from the drawing, or from docs that we're demapping. We're basically the only public street that's being closed off. Looked to me to be West 41st between 8th and 10th. Is that right, or are there others that are?
That's correct.
Okay.
That it's a little difficult to see in this. The rest of them are above grade volumes and, just pushing out the lot or below curb level out a little bit. That's to help facilitate sort of the larger sizes of the new building, which would encroach over the right of way. The only street that is like being demapped in the full current sense of demapped is 41st Street, which is already partially demapped 16 feet above grade. So we would be completing that demapping, eliminating through traffic in that section, but it will create, a better experience for the users of the terminal who right now, it'll add a lot of sidewalk and sort of public realm space for movement and circulation.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Dweck?
Thank you. A couple of follow-up questions. First, on Vice Chair Knuckles' question about the ownership structure of the commercial unit, how will the city be remunerated for the taxes? Will it be a pilot? Will the commercial owner pay taxes directly to the city? If we can get some clarity on that. And the next question, a follow-up to Commissioner Gold's question about the parking. Do you have any idea how many PAPD vehicles park in the parking space, and will that cause an impact when we take away the parking on the local streets, and what sort of impact that will create? So we can get some clarity on that.
Thank you for all those questions, Commissioner. There was a pilot signed earlier in the year. I don't have all the details off the top of my head on how exactly the pilot will work, but that is how the, does anyone else have any answers on that? Yeah, I think, but we can get you more information on the pilot agreement. Yeah.
I don't actually have all the details, but it does include the commercial towers as well as the bus terminal, to our understanding. So
the city will not receive any revenue from the commercial tower?
We will be getting it through the pilot payments.
Through the pilot, part of the Port Authority's payment?
Right, but we'll confirm that.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rampersad?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. A lot of the questions I had were already asked. I just have one particular question. And with regards to the ramp structure, is there a tracking mechanism that the Port Authority will implement upon this whole new development? For example, if a bus is going up the ramp, it does break down, are they able to pinpoint where in the ramp it's broken down? So God forbid a tow truck has to come, or maybe emergency services can locate it, because this is a significant structure looking at the maps online that we have. So I was just curious, is there any type of mechanism being installed, or is there one currently?
That's an excellent question, Commissioner, and we have asked that the Port Authority before. I don't have the exact answer right now of how that would work, but I think the idea is that this structure would be designed in the future that, buses could even have kick in autonomous driving as it goes through the ramp structure itself, and they're all spaced out appropriately. That's a really good question, and we'll highlight that for the port.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. We're going to do some brief second round. Commissioner Benjamin?
The first thing I would say is I believe currently they have bus tracking. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but starting on the New Jersey side of the tunnel, they track the buses so they can make sure there's a slot for them to be in when they get there. So there is some ability to track the buses currently. But my second level of questions has to do with two things. One, do these numbers for the 337,000 they anticipate in 2040 include the effects potentially of congestion pricing? And if they don't, how many more people do they anticipate would switch modes and be at the Port Authority? And are we prepared for that? And then two, how is this going to affect the MTA station at 8th Avenue? Right now, you walk directly from the Port Authority into the train station. Obviously, if there's construction going on, that's not going to be possible. So I'd like to see their thoughts, or the MTA's thoughts, on how they're going to handle 50,000 people trying to enter the subway at that location.
Those are both really good questions, Commissioner. I don't have that information right on me, but I think, yeah, those are very good questions.
And from the MTA also, not just from the Port Authority, who may well say, it's not our subway. And they're currently pissed at us in New Jersey anyway about congestion pricing, so I'm not sure the Port Authority is going to be our friend in that regard.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, great. Well, with that, appreciation to you, Ben, for all of your efforts. Important project for the city and for the region, and we'll look forward to picking this back up through the process. So thank you. This item is certified. We will move on to the next item for today. Thank you.
The third item on our agenda is a non-ULURP post-referral of a renewal of a previously approved special permit in Manhattan Community District 1. Our presenter is Matthew Gutierrez.
Good afternoon, Chair Garodnick and Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
The applicant for this project is Tribeca Equity Partners LP, which is seeking a renewal application pursuant to Zoning Resolution Section 1143 of a special permit pursuant to Section 7491, or modification to public plazas. They're doing so in order to modify an existing POPs located at 105 Duane Street in Manhattan Community District 1. The City Planning Commission had approved these actions in December 2019, but the applicant has yet to utilize them for reasons that I will cover later in my presentation. 105 Duane Street is located within Block 151, Lot 1, and falls within a C64 and C64A district. The residential FAR is 10 and goes up to 12 via IH bonus, as well as for commercial, it has an FAR of 10. The project area is bounded by Duane Street to the south, Trimble Place to the west, and Thomas Street to the north. The development site contains a 53-story tower, which was constructed in 1992. The mixed-use building is approximately 486 feet tall and contains roughly 380,000 square feet of floor area. The building consists of a ground floor retail and residential amenity space, as well as 451 residential units in the upper floors. The development site features two public plazas, one on the northern side of the lot fronting Thomas Street, and the other on the southern side fronting Duane Street and Trimble Place. Both plazas generated bonus floor area that was incorporated into the building at 105 Duane Street, and I'll show more detailed images of these plazas shortly. The project area also contains two other buildings. In this image, they are within the outlined area, immediately to the left of the tower fronting Thomas Street. The development site, outlined here in purple, is in the Tribeca neighborhood of Manhattan. The surrounding area is comprised of several commercial zoning districts and features a variety of residential, commercial, mixed-use, and institutional buildings, ranging in height from 2 to 40 stories. The development site is both in a C64 and C64A district. There is a C6 2A district to the south, west, and north of the development site, as well as a C6 3A district to the south. In addition, the special Tribeca mixed-use district is approximately 1 block to the south and west of the development site. Other than the development site's public plazas, there are no other POPs in the surrounding area. And there are also numerous bus and subway lines within 1 to 2 blocks of the site. The development site is an irregularly shaped lot with a total area of approximately 25,700 square feet. The development site has approximately 78 feet of frontage along Trimble Place, 197 feet along Duane Street, and 100 feet along Thomas Street. It is primarily located in the C6-4 zoning district, but there is an eastern, approximately 4,000 square foot portion located in a C6-4A zoning district. And the boundary between these districts is shown here with a thick black line that bisects the image. The development site features a 72-space underground parking garage, which can be accessed via Trimble Place, which is indicated with the arrow on the left side of the image, as well as 2 at-grade public plazas, which I'll describe more in a moment. The northern plaza is approximately 2,200 square feet, and it fronts Thomas Street. The southern plaza is approximately 9,400 square feet and fronts Duane Street and Trimble Place. And this southern plaza is where all of the proposed design changes would occur. Image 1 on the left shows a view within the southern plaza facing northwest, and image 2 offers a view facing northeast. Image 3 looks northeast from Trimble Place, showing a parking garage entrance in the background. And image 4 looks northeast from the intersection of Trimble Place and Duane Street, showing one of the entrances to the southern plaza. So before I go any further, I'll provide some relevant background on this site. In 2013, the applicant made several modifications to the southern plaza. These included the installation of a new air intake and flue pipe, replacement of certain benches, installation of new planters and modifications to existing planters, installation of new canopy piers that frame the building's entranceway, as well as the replacement of certain trash receptacles. Now, this was done without the required chair certification pursuant to ZR section 37625. And as a result, an ECB violation was issued in 2014. In 2019, the applicant sought to legalize these 2013 modifications and to make additional design changes to the southern plaza that would bring the space into greater accordance with current POP standards. They specifically applied for a special permit pursuant to 7491, or modification to public plazas, as well as a certification pursuant to 37625. The City Planning Commission approved of these on December 18th, 2019. However, except for the replacement of dead plantings, the proposed plaza conditions were never implemented. The applicant credits the delay to the advent of COVID-19, which caused construction and material sourcing challenges, as well as a desire to keep the POPs open to the public, given the heightened importance of public spaces, outdoor spaces during the pandemic. The applicant seeks a renewal pursuant to 1143 that would extend the special permit for an additional 3 years and allow for the proposed plaza modifications to be constructed. So here is a site plan that shows the southern plaza's current conditions. Its amenities include several planters and trees, benches, a drinking fountain, bicycle racks, as well as litter receptacles. In addition, the building's only active entrance is located on the northern edge of the southern plaza. As I've mentioned, the applicant seeks to carry out the design changes that had been approved in 2019. The applicant believes these changes would create a more uniform and inviting public plaza that complements the adjacent buildings and spaces. These previously approved alterations include adding 20 movable chairs and 5 movable tables, and new trash receptacles. They would also replace 6 backless benches with 6 that are backed, and add a 7th backed bench on the far eastern side of the southern plaza. This would also include relocating bicycle racks and a water fountain in accordance to current POP standards. Additionally, they would be updating certain things like wall caps, ground pavers, plantings, and a metal wrapped screening to conceal the flue pipe. On March 26th, 2024, Manhattan Community Board 1 voted unanimously in favor of this renewal rather. To carry out this project, the applicant seeks a renewal application pursuant to zoning resolution section 1143. regarding a special permit pursuant to 7491 modification to public plazas. The special permit would allow for the applicant to modify particular provisions of 3770 public plazas and carry out the previously described design changes. Given that the proposed changes are identical to those that were approved by the City Planning Commission in 2019, the findings of 7491 would still be met. That concludes my presentation, and I look forward to answering any of your questions.
Great, thank you. Can you just remind us of the standard here for review of a renewal application pursuant to 1143?
Sure. So, if I'm understanding the question correctly, after 4 years of the initial application, they would need to come back, which they are doing now, and this would last for an additional 3 years. That's the amount of time that they would need.
Hey, I'm really asking an even more basic question, which is, what are the findings that we need to establish in order to grant them a renewal of the permit?
So for the renewal, it's that the findings are continued to be met, and the original findings on which, here, let me just list over, the original findings under which it was granted were that the usefulness and attractiveness of the public plaza is assured by the proposed layout and design, and that the modifications from that original special permit result in a superior urban design relationship with the surrounding buildings and area. So it's that the findings continue to be met.
And has anything changed from the approval that the City Planning Commission made in 2019?
No changes.
Okay. So, all right. Just that's my point of clarification. I don't know if there are other questions here. Commissioner Gold?
And then just as a point to follow up, so COVID came and this didn't happen. We're here, we're renewing. What levers do we have, if any, to ensure that this time it happens?
Technically, they're still entitled to a subsequent renewal. If they don't, they're entitled to apply for a subsequent renewal. So the applicant has said that they don't anticipate any, issues implementing it within this 3-year term. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't believe there are any levers per se.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
The biggest lever is they might lose the opportunity at some point. Yeah. Okay. Other questions? Okay. This is one of those assent by voice votes. So seeing no other questions here, I am going to seek assent by a voice vote to send an approval letter to the Department of Buildings. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Terrific. Sarah, let's move on to item 4.
The fourth item on our agenda is a non-ULERP post referral of an authorization in Manhattan Community District 2. Our presenter is Ben Huff.
Welcome back.
Hello. Okay, good afternoon again. This is an application on behalf of HADSW LLC pursuant to Section 13442 of the zoning resolution for an authorization to allow an off-street automated parking facility with a maximum capacity of 7 spaces in the existing 9-story building. The building is located at 601 Washington Street in the Hudson Square area of Manhattan Community District 2. The building, which was completed in 2019, is located within an M15 R7X special mixed-use district within the Manhattan core and has 10 dwelling units. So the proposed parking facility is intended to serve as an added amenity for the residents of the building and would provide a safe and convenient place for parking. The building currently has 0 spaces. So just to review, on this slide, we can see some site photos of the project. On the left, facing east, showing the entrance along Washington Street. The photo on the right shows the longer frontage along Leroy Street. The garage door of the proposed facility is on the bottom right. So I'll quickly go through the operations of the parking garage for the commission again. The entrance and exit to the parking facility would occupy approximately 355 square feet on the ground floor of the building and would be accessed by a 12-foot curb cut, including splays on the Leroy Street frontage, approximately 30 feet from the intersection of Greenwich Street. An automated lift would shuffle vehicles between the entrance and exit on the ground floor and 2 tiers of vehicle storage space on the cellar level below. Inbound drivers would approach from the east on Leroy Street and activate the garage's mechanical door with a garage door opener. The garage door will open and the warning indicators outside the garage will flash red. Upon entering the garage, the vehicle will be positioned on a parking pallet. Once the parking screen turns green, indicating that the vehicle is properly positioned on the pallet, the driver turns off the vehicle and exits. As this is a car storage system, all vehicles must be turned off to enter the system. The garage will be equipped with carbon monoxide sensors that will sound an alarm and turn on the ventilation fans if carbon monoxide is detected. At the parking screen, which is located outside of the garage along the building's facade, the driver will swipe their fob and confirm a series of safety questions, including that the car is turned off, there is no one in the car, and the parking brake is engaged. The vehicle will then be lowered into the parking area by the automated system. Once it is below the slab, the vehicle will be rotated, so it will be facing out when the car is retrieved for departure. The vehicle will then be moved laterally for the first available space by the automated system. In the event that 6 vehicles are parked within the automated parking facility and a 7th vehicle enters, 4 vehicles would be parked on the lower tier and 2 vehicles parked on the upper tier. The 7th car would be lowered into the parking area, rotated by the automated system, then shuffled into one of the 2 available spaces adjacent to the elevator used for turntable clearance. All other vehicles would have already been rotated and ready to exit, so the 7th car would not block the turntable. The final open space adjacent to the elevator at the turntable level would be used as the shuffle space for vehicles to be moved prior to any vehicle's exit. Drivers retrieve their vehicle by swiping their fob at the garage parking screen. The automated facility moves the vehicle to the lift at the parking level, and the car is lifted to the entry bay. Once the vehicle is positioned in the entry bay, the garage door opens. The driver can then enter the car and prepare to exit the building. A stop sign within the garage would be clearly visible to exiting drivers, and a speed bump would be located within the entrance-exit lane to slow down exiting vehicles prior to crossing the sidewalk. Along with visually checking left and right before entering the street, pedestrian motion sensors and mirrors will assist the driver in ensuring the path is clear and safe. Once the car is clear of the garage door sensors, the door will close. At its full board meeting on April 18th, 2024, Community Board 2 Manhattan conditionally approved the resolution with 30 members voting in favor and 2 members voting against. The conditional favor requested that the applicant not use the facility for public parking. The board wants to make sure the 7 parking spaces be sold to owners of the condominiums in the building. And the board also requested that when cars enter and exit the facility, a flashing light will be visible to alert pedestrians. That's all I have for the presentation on this, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me see if there are questions on this one before we schedule a vote at some point down the line. Questions? Commissioner Osorio?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again for the presentation. Quick question. I know that when automated parking facilities have come up, we've usually asked whether the fire department has, where does the other agencies that have jurisdiction over this stand? Are we feeling better? I know that there have been concerns about this. Can you help us understand a little bit what has changed?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Commissioner. We have reached out. We're trying to find who would have that feedback at our other partner agencies. We're in the middle of requesting that information, and we're hoping to get that back.
Thanks so much.
Great. All right. Thank you. We will pick this one up for a vote at a later meeting. Thanks, Ben, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, number 5.
The 5th item on our agenda is a non-ULURP post-referral in Manhattan Community District 11. This is a private application for a transit easement joint certification from the CPC and the MTA to determine if a transit easement volume is required. The MTA has determined that an easement would not be required at this location. Also, Manhattan Community Board 11 has waived the recommendation. Both the letter from the MTA and the waiver from the Community Board were included in your materials. Jose Trucios is here for questions on Zoom, should there be any.
Okay, are there any questions on this one? Required to see if a transit volume is required? MTA says none is required. Community Board waived their time. Okay. All right. I'm going to seek a vote on this one. All right. I'd like assent by a voice vote to send an approval letter to the Buildings Department. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay. That is approved. Thank you. Sarah, let's move to 6.
The 6th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map and zoning text amendments in Brooklyn Community District 15. Our presenter is Mardia Rufai.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commission. This is a pre-hearing follow-up for a private rezoning application from our R4C12 district to R7DC24 district submitted by Ford Core Properties of 3033 Avenue V in Brooklyn Community District 15. The proposed development is a 9-story, 112,000 square foot building with approximately 13,000 square feet of commercial use at the ground floor and approximately 98,000 square feet of residential floor area. The building will include 109 residential units, of which 27 to 33 will be constructed pursuant to the MIH program. While the building will require either 43 to 45 parking spaces, depending on the MIH option selected, the proposed building will contain 109 attended parking spaces in 2 subgrade levels. The applicant has noted that the excess parking spaces are being provided as a response to community concerns. The proposed building will contain 8 ground floor commercial tenant spaces ranging from 700 to 5,000 square feet in size. To facilitate the proposed development, the actions requested are a zoning map amendment to rezone the project area from R4C12 to R7DC24 district, and a zoning text amendment to establish MIH area in Appendix F with options 1 and 2 in the new R7DC24 district. On April 16th, Brooklyn Community Board 15 voted 27 in favor, 2 in opposition, and 0 abstention to approve with conditions. Those conditions are that the project should maintain 109 parking spots to ease the parking constraints in the neighborhood, and also to provide 27 affordable units. On May 8th, the Brooklyn Borough President held a public hearing on this application, and on May 17th, submitted a recommendation to approve with conditions. Those conditions include the applicant reduces the amount of proposed parking to no more than 45 spaces required by the zoning, allowing the elimination of a subcellar floor from the proposed development. The second condition is that the applicant consults with the Northern House Tenants Association with regards to the community needs for the ground floor commercial space. This application is coming for an in-person public hearing on Wednesday, and the applicant will be there to answer any further questions. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So we will see this one for a public hearing on Wednesday. Any questions in advance preparation for Wednesday for the department? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. Really quick question. So I know that in the process so far, and hopefully we'll hear more about this on Wednesday, the need for the subcellar level, whether or not there's going to be parking, it's another question, but the need for the subcellar level, it raises concerns in terms of the risk of flooding. Has this come up recently in your conversations with the applicant in a way that we can maybe sort of like anticipate or frame our questions for Wednesday?
Yes, I asked the applicant about that specific question, and they said they'll be prepared to answer that tomorrow in the public hearing. Thank you so much for your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we will pick this one up, I said Wednesday. Wednesday is tomorrow, so I will pick that up. We will pick that up tomorrow. Okay. Thank you. All right, let's move to number 7.
The seventh item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map amendment in Brooklyn Community District 1. Our presenter is Catherine Nessel.
Hi there.
Hey. Great. Good afternoon, Chair Gronick and Commissioners. This is a pre-hearing review for 197 Berry Street rezoning, a private application from Bensing 250 LLC for a zoning map amendment in the Williamsburg neighborhood of Brooklyn Community District 1. This application was certified on February 20th, and the public hearing is scheduled for tomorrow, Wednesday, May 29th. The applicant proposes a partial conversion of a 26,000 square foot subgrade garage. The applicant plans to remove 100 parking spaces and convert 18,000 square feet of the garage to a self-storage facility shown in purple on the illustrative diagram provided. The applicant intends to have 300 closet-sized self-storage units ranging in size from 16 to 50 square feet, and the remaining 42 parking spaces will be provided by installing stackers in the remaining 8,000 square feet of the garage. This development would be facilitated by a rezoning on the southern half of this block, Block 2351, roughly coterminous with the applicant's property, from M12 R6B to M14 R6B. The project area would remain in the MX8 Special Mixed Use District. So the zoning change doesn't alter regulations for the project area except for a change in non-residential parking requirements. So for the use group 6, commercial establishments in the existing building, as well as for the proposed use group 16, self-storage facility, the parking requirement would be eliminated by this change from M12 to M14 zoning. Outside of the IBC, use group 16 self-storage facilities remain as of right in both M12 and M14 districts. So on April 9th, 2024, Brooklyn Community Board 1 voted to approve this application with 27 in favor, 0 in opposition, and 0 abstentions. And on May 20th, 2024, the Borough President issued a recommendation to approve the project without conditions. Briefly, I want to share that the applicant's original parking utilization study was conducted from March 10th to March 11th, 2020. In response to concerns that the study's findings may have been altered by the rapid onset of the COVID-19 pandemic during that week, the applicant has voluntarily submitted an updated parking utilization study conducted in March of this year. So off-street parking was analyzed within a 3rd-mile radius of the project area to match the geography of the 2020 study. Total capacity increased by about 400 spaces due to new construction and new garages. Off-street weekday midday available capacity did decrease from 377 spaces to 307 spaces today, but overnight capacity increased from 193 available spaces to 589 available spaces. They also looked at on-street parking within a rough quarter-mile radius of the project area that roughly matches the geography of the original study, and found that on-street weekday midday available capacity for parking increased from 65 to 189 spaces, and overnight capacity on-street increased from 216 to about 634 spaces. The applicant team will give a 2-person presentation during tomorrow's public meeting in person. This concludes my presentation, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let me go to Commissioner Benjamin.
Quick question. Berry Street at this location between North 2nd and North 3rd has been closed off for vehicular traffic for a while. I mean, you can't really get to even the Whole Foods garage. So this traffic study that they did, it sounds a little odd that they did it when nobody can get to their garage.
Understood. 2 things. So Berry Street is a bike boulevard, so it prioritizes bike and pedestrian uses, but cars are still able to access it, and there is still parking on the street. It's just you're supposed to go slower, suggested 5 miles an hour speed limit. The parking study, too, is conducted for the wider geography of the study area. So not just looking at Berry Street, but looking at the 3rd-mile radius for off-street parking and quarter-mile radius roughly for on-street parking. The applicant has indicated that they're willing to talk more about it tomorrow, so definitely they're willing to delve into it. Yeah, great question.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other questions here, we will pick this one up tomorrow for a public hearing. Thank you, Catherine. Okay, let's move on to the 8th item on the agenda today.
The 8th item on our agenda is a City Council modification scope determination for the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity and the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity M District's citywide zoning text amendments. Our presenter is Matthew Waskiewicz.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Glad to be here. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Matt Waskiewicz, Assistant Director for Economic Development and Regional Planning. And I'm going to detail modifications we've received from the City Council following an affirmative subcommittee and committee vote last week. So before I go through, I'm going to go through each of the 18 subcomponents of the project one by one and detail both where we started for each of these parts of the proposal, as well as what the proposal looks like following council modifications. I will say that we in the department have reviewed all of the modifications made by the City Council and have advised that all of the modifications are within scope, seeker scope, land use scope as well. None of them require any further analysis. And details of that are with the technical memorandum that would be in your materials that you received. So starting with proposal 1, we proposed that in all residence districts, legal non-conforming storefronts could be reoccupied by select commercial uses. We define that as being those uses that are within use group 6, as well as offices in C2 districts, regardless of the duration of their vacancy. The City Council agreed with this basic premise. However, they modified the proposal to limit the reoccupation to a smaller selection of commercial uses, which the council defined as those permitted in a C11 to C14 overlay district. So this removed a few uses as pursuant to other modifications the council made that I'll detail in a few minutes, but some example uses that are removed would be automobile dealers and lumber stores. Proposal 2, we proposed to allow for the same mix of business types or uses across C1 and C2 districts and the same mix of business types across C4 to C7 districts. As modified by the City Council, the council adopted or is proposing to adopt what we suggested for C4 to C7 districts. So that part of the proposal remains as we referred it last October. However, in regard to C1 districts, the council did make some modifications. So certain categories of uses that are allowed today will remain allowed in our C2 districts, but would be excluded from C1 districts, these uses being automobile and other motor vehicle dealers, automotive service stations and boat fuel sales, and retail lumber stores. In addition, the council modified so that some of the proposed new uses in C1 overlay districts would be subject to a size restriction of 3,000 square feet. These are rental and leasing services, computer infrastructure, data processing, special food services, and repair and maintenance. I'll note that the council made exceptions for consumer-based repair and rental. Proposal 3, which we propose to allow for small-scale clean production uses in C1 and C2 districts up to 5,000 square feet, and then in C4 to C7 districts up to 10,000 square feet on the ground floor, with no limit above the ground floor. The City Council agreed with our proposal without modification in C2 to C7 districts inclusive. However, in C1 districts, the council modified the proposal to exclude certain categories of uses from these districts, those being manufacturing for converted paper products, chemicals, primary and fabricated metal products, as well as machinery. There are some exceptions that were made for the types of products that are, for example, stationery, soap, or cutlery and other kitchen appliances that might be typically found along in a retail shop, so you can make things and sell them in the same space. I'll also note the council modified in C1 districts citywide for production uses to be subject to a size restriction of 3,000 square feet. Proposal 4, we propose to remove the requirements for additional loading docks when there's a change of use for an existing building. The council did not have any modifications on this proposal. Proposal number 5, we propose to allow for commercial uses of the same level or above residences, provided that physical separation between commercial and residential and non-residential use was maintained. In addition, certain uses were able to locate only after meeting applicable sound, vibration, and venting requirements. As modified by the City Council, all of Use Group 6 retail and Use Group 9 storage uses would also be subject to these supplemental environmental requirements. Eating and drinking establishments would be permitted in Manhattan above residential, as well as in certain special districts outside of Manhattan, those being downtown Brooklyn, Long Island City, downtown Jamaica, Gowanus, Stapleton, and St. George. And lastly, amusement uses would be prohibited above residential in a residential building citywide, and amusements would be prohibited at the same level as residences in a C1 or C2 overlay outside of Manhattan if there are residences in that same building. Proposal 6, to modernize and update the way that we categorize use and use groups in our zoning. According to the North American Industry Classification System, the Council did not have any modifications to this proposal. Moving on to our second goal, which was to boost growing industries, starting with Proposal 7 on agriculture. We propose to allow for agriculture to be in an enclosed building in commercial districts without any restrictions on its size. As modified by the City Council, agriculture would be permitted to be enclosed without restrictions on size or use in most high-density commercial or office districts. So the Council defined this as C15 to C19 districts, C25 to C29 districts, excuse me, that's a typo, and in C4 to C8 districts. However, the Council modified that in select C1 and C2 overlay districts, agriculture would be restricted by size when enclosed and not in a greenhouse, making that distinction in part because greenhouses do not have a size restriction and are allowed in these districts in zoning today. So in C1 overlay districts, that limitation is at 3,000 square feet and 10,000 square feet in C2 overlay districts. In addition, the Council modified the proposal to prohibit crops in C1 or C2 districts that require an adult use cultivator license or an adult use conditional cultivator license, as set forth in the state's cannabis law. Moving on to Proposal 8 around life sciences and laboratories, we propose to modernize the definition for laboratories in our zoning and commercial districts, allow for commercial laboratories in C1 districts, and expand the applicability of a laboratory special permit to be citywide. The proposal, as modified by the Council, would adopt the definition for laboratories, as well as allowing for as-of-right laboratories to be permitted in C1 districts in Manhattan. As modified by the Council, laboratories would not be allowed in C1 districts outside of Manhattan. And lastly, with regard to the CPC special permit for use, so this is 74-191, it would be allowed except for in C1 and C2 districts outside of Manhattan. Proposal 9 for nightlife, we propose to allow for dancing, comedy, open mic nights, and other forms of scheduled entertainment in bars and restaurants in C1 and C2 districts up to 200-person capacity, which is today's limitation in zoning for musical entertainment. The Council did not have any modifications to this proposal. Proposal 10, amusements. We propose to consolidate a range of existing and otherwise undefined in our zoning experiential business types under a single definition of an amusement or recreation facility, which would be limited to 10,000 square feet in C1 and C2 districts. The Council modified this proposal to permit these uses as proposed in C24 through C29 districts and without size limitations as proposed in C4 to C6 districts. However, in some select C1 and C2 overlay districts, the Council modified the proposal by limiting its size, that being 3,000 square feet in C1 to C14 districts, 5,000 square feet in C15, C21, C22, and C23 districts, with exceptions made for those amusement uses which exist today at 10,000 square feet or were proposed at 10,000 square feet in those districts. And then lastly, within a mixed-use building, amusement uses would be limited to being located below residences and are subject to noise performance standards. Proposal 11 around home occupations, we propose to allow for home occupations to expand in size from 25% or 500 square feet to 49% with no square foot limit. We propose to expand the number of employees outside from 1 to 3, as well as remove a list of prohibited occupations. As modified by the Council, this proposal would expand home occupations from 25% or 500 square feet to 49% over 1,000 square feet, whichever is less. Second, the proposal, as modified by the Council, the number of employees would be retained at 1 citywide, except for in those places where the zoning already permits more than 1 employee, those being mixed-use districts as well as special districts, the MX districts, I should say. And then lastly, the list of prohibited occupations would be removed with exceptions made for those that involve animal handling, so kennels, animal breeders, and in-person veterinary medicine. Goal number 3, enable more business-friendly streetscapes. We propose to create more consistent ground floor design regulations to activate our commercial streets. This proposal is essentially as modified by the council. It is what we proposed, or as modified by the CPC, I should say, with some technical language adjustments made to ease interpretation for practitioners. Proposal 13 for auto repair, we proposed a few things here. Allow for auto repair to be based on whether the surfacing are light or heavy. Allow, as of right, light auto repair that is today in C2, C4, and C6 districts to be replaced with a BSA special permit process. And where light auto repair is not allowed today, we propose to allow it by BSA special permit in C1, C3, C5, and C7 districts. As modified by the council, this proposal is as proposed in C2 to C7 districts, where light auto repair is not to be as of right in the future and therefore subject to a BSA special permit. I'll note the council modified this proposal to exclude it from C1 districts, which is consistent with current zoning. There would be no BSA pathway in C1 districts. The council also modified the findings for the BSA special permit to include that the BSA shall consider the presence of existing repair shops within 500 feet of the proposed use and whether any increase in the number of use would have impacts on the surrounding area. Proposal 14 on microdistribution, we proposed to create a new use called microdistribution facility, allow it up to 2,500 square feet in C1 and C2 districts, up to 5,000 square feet on the ground floor in C4 to C7. As modified by the council, this proposal would allow, as we proposed, microdistribution facilities in C4 to C7 districts citywide. In Manhattan, the proposal would be as we proposed, allowing up to 2,500 square feet in C1 and C2 districts. Outside of Manhattan, the council modified the proposal so that the as-of-right allowance would be restricted in favor of a BSA special permit option with a size restriction of 5,000 square feet, which is essentially what was proposed in those districts under the BSA option. Lastly, the council modified the findings for the BSA special permit to, similar to auto repair facilities, consider the presence of existing microdistribution within 500 square feet of the proposed use, and whether any increase in the number of those use in the area would have impacts on the surrounding area. Proposal 15, moving on to our fourth and final goal. What we proposed here was to allow for a CPC authorization up to 15,000 square feet of commercial uses defined as what's being permitted in a C2 district on a large-scale residential campus. As modified by the council, this proposal becomes a CPC special permit, so going through a full ULURP, and there would be a prohibition on accessory drive-through facilities in conjunction with this special permit. 16, corner stores. We propose to create a CPC authorization that would consider on a case-by-case basis up to 2,500 square feet of use group 6 or offices on a corner lot in a residence district. The council modified this proposal by removing it entirely. 17, we propose to create a CPC authorization to consider changes to bulk based on the allowances of a C7 district that would match the FAR of the surrounding zoning for the lot. So essentially figure out what your FAR is for your district and then what the comparative bulk envelope would be for the C7 district that matches your FAR, and that is the bulk that you'd be allowed to seek modification for. As modified by the council, this proposal is as we proposed in M13, M15, M2, and M3 districts, as well as all commercial districts. In certain zoning districts, however, the council modified the reference per your floor area ratio when applying for the bulk provision, so that in C81 and M11 districts, where your reference FAR is 1, the bulk provisions for a C71 district shall be applied, so essentially going from a 30-foot street wall to a 45-foot street wall. And then in M12, M14, and C82 districts, where you have a 2 FAR today, the bulk provisions for a C72 district shall be applied, which is the equivalent of 3 FAR. Lastly, but certainly not least, the creation of new M districts. This would be a proposal to create a suite of new zoning districts, each with loft-like bulk and different use allowances. The core district, M3A, in a range of 2 to 3 FAR, and non-industrial uses proposed to be up to 1 FAR. The transition or M2A district, 2 to 5 FAR range, with the maximum floor area only to be reached when you have space that is guaranteed for certain industrial uses. And then M1A growth, 2 to 15 FAR, with the same floor area available to commercial, community facility, and M uses. Several modifications by the council with regard to this proposal. Starting with the core district, the council modified the proposal to reduce the allowed commercial uses up to 10,000 square feet per zoning lot, or 1 FAR, whichever is less. And secondly, the council modified to restrict the applicability of some BSA and CPC special permits, many of which could allow under certain cases for you to go beyond that 10,000 square foot limit. In the M2A transition district, the council modified the proposal to reduce the commercial FAR and community facility FAR to be a 1 FAR differential. So for example, in your 5 FAR district, your maximum for non-industrial uses alone would be 4.0, and to get to the maximum FAR, you would need to build out a full 1.0 FAR of industrial use. The council also modified the transition district so that lots larger than 5,000 square feet, 50% of the ground floor is required to be for industrial uses if the site is opting for that FAR bonus. And lastly, the council modified this proposal, this district, to revert to the current M1 use allowances and their 10,000 square foot retail limits, with an exception for food stores, which is at 30,000 square feet. I'll also add, not on this slide, but the M1A growth district also reverting to current M1 use allowances and 10,000 square foot retail limits, with the exception of food stores where there will be no square footage limitation. And then lastly, for all M districts, if being mapped on a waterfront, would be subject to a waterfront yard setback. In addition to all of those modifications, some other ones that I just wanted to make sure I highlighted, with regard to Proposal 17, some modifications for the BSA drive-through facility special permit to consider air quality impacts of idling vehicles, illumination from headlights, as well as ensuring there be adequate buffer and screening for the drive-through facility from adjacent residential uses. Also, with regard to Proposal 17, for some other BSA special permits, exempting certain community facilities and infrastructure uses from an initial 10-year BSA term. The term as modified would be up to the Board of Standards and Appeals. And then with regard to a few special districts, which sort of go across proposals number 2 on uses and number 12 on streetscape, in the Gowanus Special District, removing auto repair shops and for-profit art galleries from the Gowanus mix. Enhanced commercial districts retaining a 25-foot frontage restriction for banks, and with regard to the Special Madison Preservation District, applying some Tier C streetscape frontages on Use Group 6 and Use Group 8. And with that, I would open the floor for any questions you might have. Thank you for the time.
Great, thanks, Matt. And before we make our official scope determination, I want to thank you again for all of your efforts and your ability to stay in all the details here, and your efforts in working with the City Council, Council Planning and Land Use, and the Speaker's Office, to Carolyn, of course, and to the entire team who had a role in this. We were very, very appreciative to all of you. And also we're appreciative of our partners at the Council. We know, took an 18-part proposal with lots of subparts and 51 members, and came to some very thoughtful modifications. So I just wanted to say that, and let me see if there are questions here related to any of the details or any of the scope questions or anything at all. Any questions? Okay, well, how about applause? That's fine. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners.
Okay, so let me seek assent by a voice vote to send a letter to the Council. The modifications are in fact within scope. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, ayes have it. Thank you. Next.
Okay, future votes for consideration on Wednesday, tomorrow, May 29th, is Lieutenant Leah Playground, Block 21, Lot 1 in Staten Island Community District 1, which is a special hillsides preservation district authorization, and R456 Tottenville High School Field House authorization and CPC certification in Staten Island Community District 3. Briefing materials for both items were included in your weekend materials. Questions? Okay. Future votes for June 12th is the Old Croton Aqueduct Walk. This is a report regarding a landmark designation in the Bronx Community District 5 and 7. Briefing materials were included in your weekend materials. Okay. All right. Post-hearing follow-ups. For post-hearing follow-ups, we have Arthur Kill Terminal, which had a public hearing at the May 1st public meeting. There was a follow-up memo in your materials, and Puneet is here to present.
All right, Puneet. Welcome.
Hello. All right, good afternoon, commissioners and chairs. My name is Puneet Singh. I'm a community planner in the Staten Island office, here to once again present Arthur Kill Terminal, proposed marine port that would host offshore wind turbine component assembly and staging, located in the Richmond Valley neighborhood in Staten Island's Community District 3. So a notice of completion for this proposal's draft environmental impact statement was issued on February 2nd, 2024. The comment period ended on May 13th, 2024, and the final environmental impact statement is expected to be completed this June. Via email, DCP received nearly 40 comments about this proposal. There were 33 comments in favor of the project, which represented the Jamaica Bay Rockaway Parks Conservancy, American Littoral Society, Broad Channel Civic Association, and Staten Island Community Board 3's Land Use Committee, in addition to individual community members and representatives from local building and trade unions. The comments expressed support for this project, which would help make Staten Island a clean energy beachhead in the Northeast with hundreds of jobs, as well as support for the wetland mitigation slated to take place in Jamaica Bay in Queens. There were 6 comments expressing concern about the project, which represented the Protectors of Pine Oak Woods and the Staten Island Coalition for Wetlands and Forests community organizations. These 6 comments were critical of the proposed wetland mitigation taking place in Jamaica Bay in Queens and offered potential wetland mitigation sites in Staten Island. They also expressed uncertainty about the project's success due to the applicant having to secure wind turbine developer tenants. The applicant team is aware of these 33 favorable comments and 6 unfavorable comments and is including them in an appendix in the final environmental impact statement. Now, in response to the questions and statements made at the May 1st public hearing, the Staten Island office has received 2 memos. The first memo is from the applicant team and offers an overview of the Arthur Kill Terminal Wetlands Compensatory Mitigation Program and explains how the mitigation plan evolved. The applicant team spent a considerable amount of time considering full mitigation on Staten Island. And although 100% of the mitigation for freshwater wetlands is taking place in Mariners Marsh Park in Staten Island, roughly 7.5 acres, the applicant team was ultimately unable to locate the mitigation for the tidal and subtidal wetlands within the borough, instead opting for Black Bank Marsh in Queens. The first reason for this was that the agencies overseeing the wetland mitigation all prefer in-kind wetland mitigation. In-kind means that the end result of said mitigation should result in an outcome similar to what was initially removed. The agencies overseeing mitigation for this project include the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. In the case of Arthur Kill Terminal, the end product of the mitigation for removing freshwater wetlands should resemble the freshwater wetlands initially removed, and the mitigation for the removal of tidal and subtidal wetlands should similarly resemble the tidal and subtidal wetlands initially removed. The second reason that not all mitigation could take place on Staten Island is that single large-scale sites are preferred for mitigation. If you mitigate in a single contiguous cluster, then the ecological benefits and longevity of the wetlands are much higher. For example, if you have to mitigate for 30 acres of wetlands, it's ecologically better to do so in a contiguous parcel of 30 acres, as opposed to a mosaic of smaller parcels, 10 over here, 15 there, and 5 right here. Having a single large-scale site for mitigation also reduces the overall legal complexity of an already complicated project. So these are the two principal reasons that resulted in the applicant team being able to locate all of the mitigation for the removal of freshwater wetlands in Staten Island and Mariners Marsh Park, and all of the mitigation for the removal of tidal and subtidal wetlands in Black Bank Marsh in Jamaica Bay in Queens. That was the first memo. Now, the second memo we received was a follow-up to a statement made by a Staten Island community member, again, at the public hearing on May 1st. During that public hearing, two community members encouraged the applicant team and the commission to locate all of the mitigation on Staten Island, or at least try to locate as much mitigation as possible within the borough. The memo consists of a list of various sites across Staten Island that the members of the Protectors of Pine Oak Woods and the Staten Island Coalition for Wetlands and Forests identified as having potential to meet the mitigation requirements. They also highlighted how placing mitigation at these sites could dovetail nicely with ongoing initiatives like the New York City Department of Environmental Protection's Blue Belt system, as well as City Hall's commitment to ensuring that ecological benefits reach environmental justice communities, which in our case are located on the North Shore of Staten Island. So that does it for me. I would like to open the floor for any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Commissioner Cerullo?
Thank you. So I think the memo from the community resident and the comments of Protectors of Pine Oak Woods sort of represent very well the concerns that are out there right now, particularly on the wetlands mediation piece of this. We know that Protectors made recommendations, and again, the other memo referenced Protectors making recommendations. Have they been responded to, or are they just being captured conceptually in the, it's better to do it all, it makes more sense to do it all in one place where you can do the most at the same time? Or when, if at all, can we expect actual responses? And the second memo had other questions that have been posed. Do they get responded to at all? Or is it just all of this will end up in the final EIS for everyone to know that these issues have been raised, and somehow they get captured in a bigger response?
Thank you, Commissioner. That's a big question. I think all these questions and statements and the arguments that have been posed, in addition to the listing of the sites, will definitely be in the final environmental impact statement, as opposed, or as it concerns, the applicant responding directly to the Protector of Pine Oak Woods regarding the material that was in their memo. I don't anticipate any more follow-up aside from what they put in their memo. And we felt that their memo was adequately responded to most of the questions raised by Protector of Pine Oak Woods, simply because it outlined why initially they attempted to locate all of the mitigation on Staten Island, but due to the various barriers, they were ultimately unable to do that.
Well, okay, so there were specific locations that Protectors had identified.
Correct, yes.
And so was there any point in time that the applicant actually commented on those specific locations to say, these are the reasons we're not looking at them? Or was it, again, just packaged in, it's better, or the practice is to try to do the like amount with the like type in a bigger, more, in the most maximum way possible?
Right. I would say it was the latter. They didn't line by line respond to the specific blocks identified by the Protector of Pine Oak Woods. They simply laid out a general argument for why the plan evolved the way it did. In the memo that the applicant submitted, they kind of the memo presents a hypothetical, which is that the applicant team could have tried to locate all of the mitigation on Staten Island, including for tidal and subtidal wetlands. Well, what that would have looked like was the applicant team having to acquire a bunch of disparate lots or entering agreements with those lots' private owners, and that would have created a really onerous process in terms of just getting the mitigation plan forward. And if they were to take that route, if a single small lot, for example, that was identified by the protectors became compromised for whatever reason, then the entire mitigation plan as a whole would fail and this proposal could not go forward. So a general response to the specific sites that the protectors did identify.
Okay, I understand and respect that response. So just want to be clear on that. I just am unsure that the work that may have had to go into finding other locations that may not be as easy to create a remediation plan should not have been pursued. That's not an issue between you and I, it's just an issue. And I'm not sure that in a community like this one, where wetlands are a big part of a great deal of our open space, the community that actually built or was the home of the first Blue Belt system that I know because I did it in 1990, that there shouldn't have been more return to the borough environmentally, given the project that this is, both physically and environmentally. That's just my take on this. But I wanted to get a sense of whether or not any of the questions that were posed actually had been responded to, and we just didn't see the response. The answer is no, the applicant's not responding to these, and I guess we're not responding to them on behalf of the applicant either, but they'll all be packaged in the final EIS, so there's a record of the questions. Okay, I understand.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks so much for walking us through the materials. These are very useful, and kudos to the Department of City Planning for facilitating this conversation, because this is an important discussion at this point in the process. I had a comment and a similar question to Commissioner Cerullos, because I believe that's at the core here. And I wanted to add to your question that the reason why it may be, we don't know what the scientific answer is yet. My question is when we'll get that, if we'll get that on time, et cetera. But the reason why we can't find enough opportunities to do the mitigation in Staten Island is because the places where we could have done that have been destroyed. So we can't, I think, sort of continue to look elsewhere where we should be restoring wetlands that used to exist there. This is not creating wetlands out of thin air. This is actually restoring an ecosystem that used to be there. So I hope that is incorporated somehow in some of the research or the scientific response that I'm hoping the members of the public that have been raising the issues can receive. My question is really very specific, and apologies if you explained that and I missed it, but in the first memo, there's a distinction between, or there's a clarification that the mitigation plan looked at 20 potential sites and that there was an internal evaluation. Again, to Commissioner Cerullo's question, that wasn't a public conversation or process in any way. In other words, this was just AKT's sort of like research activity, looking at some potential opportunities and then deciding whether they could or couldn't complete the mitigation in Staten Island, right? Or has this been part of the discussion? Have the members of the public, especially some of the folks that have been engaging in the later part, been part of it? In other words, is this also sort of like a response out of the bloom for them, or have they been involved in that? And two, have the criteria for evaluation and the evidence that these places are not feasible, et cetera, been shared?
Thank you for your question, Commissioner. The initial list of 20 places that were considered has not been given to us. We do know, just from our interactions with them colloquially, some of the sites that they were considering, for example, Sawmill Creek, because that's part of EDC's Wetland Mitigation Bank. Now, your second question again, please, if you will.
Well, there were a couple questions, but maybe the other quick question is, you haven't seen any evidence or any idea of how those sites were evaluated or what those sites were?
No more information about what those sites were, and as far as the criteria used to evaluate them, just going along with the policies and guidance given by the relevant state and federal jurisdictions that are also involved in this mitigation, like EPA, National Oceanic Atmospheric, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. That's the extent of what we know about the criteria and also the identification process the applicant team carried out.
Thank you. That's useful. And then maybe just one last question, which is, so DEC is looking at this, has to look at this in full detail, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they will determine whether the mitigation plan makes sense, right? And we may just not have that information before we actually vote, or can you help us understand a little bit, where does DEC now fully dive into this conversation and provide an answer to whether the mitigation plan is feasible and guaranteed?
Yeah, let me get my team leader on to answer this final one.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Commissioner. We don't have a sense of timeline for when DEC will complete its review of the joint permit application, but we'd be happy to relay that question to the applicant and see if they can provide a sense of when they've been led to understand that process would be complete.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, great. Sarah, what's next?
We do have a note from Stephanie, who's joining us on Zoom, about the FEIS comments.
Hi, Commissioners. This is Stephanie Shalou, Director of Environmental Review. Just a note on the FEIS. All of the comments that were received on the draft environmental impact statement will be summarized and responded to in the final EIS. So that will be part of your package, and we do anticipate publishing that this Friday, the 31st, to ensure 10 days prior to your vote in mid-June. So you can expect that at the end of this week.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Puneet.
Our next post-hearing follow-up is 500 Kent Avenue, which had a public hearing at the May 15th public meeting. Amrita is here to discuss the latest and in case there are any questions.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The 500 Kent applicant team is in the process of compiling responses to questions and comments from the CPC, and the responses are anticipated to be included in this Friday CPC package. I'm here today to see if there are additional questions that we should relay to the applicant following the public hearing. A summary of the feedback so far has been included on a slide that we'll be pulling up shortly. There we go. And I'd be happy to take any follow-up questions.
Great. So here's the summary of what the comments have been heard presently. Applicant is working on it.
That's right.
And so we will just proceed to get those answers unless there's anything that's not on here that should be on here. So this is an opportunity if anybody has anything else. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Lastly, for post-hearing follow-ups, we have Bronx Metro North, which had a public hearing at the May 15th public meeting. There were testimonies and comments in your weekend materials. The team will return for a post-hearing discussion at the review session on June 10th. But if there are any questions today, Michael is also here.
Okay. Any follow-ups? No. Thank you. All right. Sarah, anything else?
No, Chair.
Paul, we're happy to see you. You too, Michael, but... Okay. With that, noting that tomorrow is in fact Wednesday, we'll see you all here at 10 o'clock. For members of the public who wish to participate, 10 o'clock tomorrow here at 120 Broadway, otherwise online at nyc.gov/engage. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
The time is 4:09 p.m.